America. Today, I want to talk about a group of special individuals, a mafia inside of our army. That's right, I'm talking about the E4 Mafia. So without further delay, let's begin. 1. Barnaby. Now, I don't know where Barnaby came from, but he sounds like the ringleader of a circus. This is the guy in charge of all the E4s, and it's not that he's responsible. Oh no, he just knows the system well enough to get himself out of trouble, detail, and responsibility. Well, show me the way, Barnaby. Show me the way. 2. Special ed. The guy got time in grade and he's getting all those educational correspondence courses in. Now don't act like you didn't have the folder with all these answers on these courses. That shit went around everywhere. I mean, if you look at it, the guy's an MP taking a course on fixing the flux capacitor on a 1981 DeLorean. 3. The in charge. Now this motherfucker's the devil. Not yet an NCO, not even a corporal. But give this joker a few soldiers and he's gonna act like we gave him room service. Saturday they're doing your laundry, Sunday they cleaning your room, and on Monday you're smoking them because they couldn't get their own shit squared away. Alright, now in charge didn't really seal the deal for you, huh? Well, that's okay. We got 4. The aggressor. Now fear for your life when this guy gets promoted. You know what I'm talking about. He's a little too in touch with his emotions and takes just about everything personal. Oh, you motherfuckers. Okay, alright. I'm putting counselings on all you privates. You think you can do this shit to me? I'll have you doing flutter kicks until your legs fall off, private. PT program, private. 7 days a week room inspection, private. Who you think you fucking with? I'm an E4. I run shit here. You just live here. 5. The experience. The senior specialist that kinda knows it all, right? He's in the gray area between not being an NCO and not being a private. Now a lot of you might say these specialists, they got an excuse for everything. No, you see excuse, I see experience. Take a look at these. It's all experience. These guys, they understand the game. They get it. 6. The mole. Now this specialist always surround NCOs. He ain't even promoted yet and already forgot where he came from. Instead of getting us some intels on NCOs, he's out being an informant for the NCO. The sad reality is, he's too close to authority for us to touch him. But it does mean that we will leave him hanging whenever we see him in trouble. We call that tribute, a sacrifice, for the greater cause of the E4 Mafia. 7. The life ender. Now you know how private will go out and buy a brand new car? Well, this specialist will go out and get married. He'll find his new wife in one of 3 places. His unit, a bar, or the strip club. The problem I have with that is that 1, never shit what you eat. 2, never marry an alcoholic. And 3, never marry a whore. See, now goddamn it, Drew, why you gotta go ahead and talk about the strippers? We love strippers. Now relax, I meant that with 10% insult and 90% love. 8, the fuck off. Now this guy's done. He's out the door. Leave him alone. He's been to E5 so many times, he kinda got his middle finger out at everyone. His packet's full of Article 15, so his NCOs don't know what to hit him with next, so they kinda just leave him alone. 9. The disgruntled. Now this guy hates the army. He's always talking about how he keeps getting fucked by the army and how everything's all jacked up and always, and I mean always, over-exaggerates the story. Do you wanna know how I got these scars? Well, okay. I was in Iraq, and we received an ID encounter. Shrapnel grazes my leg. Arcom denied. The second time, we received sniper fire. 7.62 penetrates my vest. Purple Heart denied. The third time, I'm on the 5 getting chow. We receive indirect fire motor. I'm in the bunker, and I get awarded a cab, a fucking cab. So I pull out my blade, and I say, why so serious? Let's put a smile on that face. And finally, 10, the booze. Cause you wanna go out and celebrate with your buddies before you start recommending them for Article 15s, right? The irony is that there's a 75% chance that you never get to E5 cause the weekend before the big promotion, you went out and led by example in the worst way. Now this is why the phrase E4 Mafia for life exists today. Good job, genius. And this concludes my 10 types of specialists you will find in the Army. I'll see you guys next week and like always.
dudes, what's happening, man? Buckle up, cause I'm about to blow your freaking mind. Now, I know that everybody who wants to work in video games wants to be a character concept designer, but guess what? There are a lot of other jobs that game studios need artists for, and they are awesome jobs, and they are so much easier to get than the most competitive job, character designer. This is particularly appealing right now because during a recession, what do people do? They sit around and watch Netflix and play video games. That means the video game industry never really gets hit too bad by the recession. Back in 08 and 09, I was working at Blizzard and we were busier than ever. We were still hiring. Even now, we're so busy that I have to turn jobs away. Let's start with the easy ones. First up, let's talk about 3D modelers. This is a very easily learnable skill. If you're struggling with drawing but you really want to work in games, consider getting into 3D modeling because it's a technical driven skill, which means it's very easy to learn, and there are a lot of tutorials about how to do it, especially if you're working off of other people's concepts. You're not in charge of coming up with the character design, you're not in charge of coming up with the environment prop design, you're not in charge of all of the stuff that they have to go through to create a design that gets approved. You just have to model what is given to you. You're supposed to model what is somebody else has already designed for you, and that makes it so much easier. It's less pressure on you. And I'll tell you another thing, if you're concept art, you're going to get 80% of your work, 70-80% of your work is going to get thrown out because it's considered cheap and disposable, whereas a 3D modeler, your stuff is valued, man. They are not going to ask you to destroy it or rework it as frequently or as often. Like once it's 3D, they don't like to throw it out. So another thing to think about is for every one concept artist that a studio needs, they need about 10 3D modelers. Every time that I go to GDC, I mean every year, I see lines and lines of concept artists trying to get their portfolio reviewed, and the poor art director who's doing the reviews is just hoping and praying that he gets one guy out of that bunch who's got some 3D in their portfolio. There is way too much to cover in terms of like what a 3D modeler needs to know, but basically you're going to need to dig into ZBrush, Maya, or 3D Coat. I use Blender because I do a lot of indie stuff on the side. These days, texturing is done through PBR, which is physics-based rendering, but I like to actually render out and paint, like hand-painted textures. Very crafted, very artsy, and I love 3D because it's like doing a 3D painting, especially if you get into texturing every one of those faces. It's very exciting if you really get into it because once you build something in 3D, you can pose it however you want, you can position it, you can change the lighting and change the mood and atmosphere, and you can really create some cool stuff with 3D. I've been digging into it a lot this year just because I love it so much. It's not my career goal or anything like that. I'm practically retired, but I'll tell you what, man, doing 3D for games is a hell of a lot of fun, especially when you start dropping it into Unreal Engine or something like that. Oh man, it's so cool. But if you hate 3D and you're like, hey, well, I just really want to do 2D, you should consider doing mobile 2D assets. If you like to draw more cartoony, you might find a better fit for your art style in the mobile game space. The mobile game industry is still very strong, and it's also very much in need of 2D artists, stylized 2D artists. You know how I'm always saying don't put anime heads in your portfolio? Well, if you wanted to get into mobile game development, that might be what they need. If your art style matches similar to what they do, or you can do what they do, well, then you should apply. To get into this kind of a field, you're going to have to break down how games are made though, because you're going to have to make assets that are going to have to be animatable, which means they're going to have to be rigged to work with puppet animation. UI artists, icons, user interface. These are the guys who have to design the frames and the ability icons and the item icons that go into a character's inventory and the achievement icons. And these guys are in high demand. This is such a chill job. I gotta tell you, man, I did a lot of icons for World of Warcraft between doing environment concept, and I did a lot of icons for League of Legends and Diablo 3. And I'll tell you what, man, it's relaxing. Every one of them is a little painting, and you learn so much about composition because you have to make all these ability ideas work as these tiny little icons. And when you're doing framework or front end or menus or inventory and stuff like that, man, these are great exercises for learning composition and learning the user experience, the flow. So how a player or how a user is going to interact with the pages of information and the items in their inventory. It's a psychology thing, man. There's so much to learn. It's infinite and it's so exciting, and it's such an easy job to get into because everybody wants the more glamorous character designer job. But guess what, man? Every studio needs those UI artists too. Furthermore, the best thing I got out of doing those icons for League of Legends all those years ago was that I really developed my texturing and material rendering skills. And you're doing that a lot when you're working on these tiny little icons. UI artists are some of the most underappreciated roles in the gaming industry because the UI sets so much of the mood and the atmosphere for your game. Also, little known fact, you'd be surprised to find that a lot of times you get paid more to do the job that is less glamorous. Seriously, the game industry is weird like that. It's like the water boy getting paid more than the quarterback. But it's true. It's true. I'll tell you what, a lot less pressure too. Pixel artists. This is a thing again. You can actually be a pixel artist and make a good living doing it. There are a lot of artists out there on Twitter and on YouTube that are teaching pixel art, and especially if you want to work in the indie game space, because pixel art is considered very cheap to do. It's very fast. If you don't have a lot of patience, you might want to consider it. It is a skill. You do have to really develop it. You can't just do high resolution stuff and shrink it down. A lot of pixel artists are also expected to be able to animate the work as well. So a lot of times they don't work as something like Photoshop. They have specialized programs for that. And I haven't done it in 20 years. So I don't do the pixel art thing so much anymore, but check out a program called Aseprite if you want to learn how to do some 2D pixel animations. Pretty neat stuff. The jobs that pixel artists are going to get are going to mostly be at indie game studios, and there are a lot of those out there. I would kind of watch those Kickstarters and look for successful Kickstarters who got backed. Tech artists. Tech artists are wizards. They're freaking wizards, man, because what they're doing is they're bridging that gap between what the artists may want and what is actually technically possible in the engine. And so what I mean by that is, like, whenever you see something explode in a game, or whenever you see like lava flows coming down the side of geometry, or you see like a mist that's volumetric and it actually reacts to the character stepping through it, all that stuff is figured out by these tech geniuses. It's not like these things are just built into the engines. Somebody has to design them, and tech artists also have to build tools to make this job easier for the artists on the team as well. Tech artists are in extremely high demand because you have to be very structured, you have to be very formulaic, but you also have to have the non-rigid creativity to think outside of the box and go, all right, well, I want to accomplish this thing that's never been done before using this limited set of tools, and figure out how I can take this geometry and make it do the effect that we're aiming for here. A lot of times a tech artist can be the secret weapon in any game development studio's arsenal, because they might build a whole game around a cool tech art experiment. I mean, sometimes rendering styles come from this. Sometimes it's things like you see in the game Vane, where you've got the whole world kind of shimmering and vibrating in this kind of a low poly art style. And it's like that came from a tech artist. Most artists don't want to think about the technical limitations of things. Most concept artists don't want to think about how things are going to actually work in game. And so if you can start to think that way, and you can actually demonstrate and show how it's going to work, you're going to be in very high demand. Next up, and I'm going to cover very briefly, 3D animation. These days, a lot of studios are digging deep into mocap and integrating mocap with a lot more hand-animated stuff. But I've never seen a game development team that doesn't need animators, not just to clean that up, but to actually blend it and make it work. You don't just capture the mocap data, you've got to actually translate it. There are no mocap suits for spiders, dogs, and horses, so they're going to have animators come in and actually animate things. And that's not to mention that there's still a high demand for more real hand-animated 3D. You know, it's still a thriving industry, and not everything's switched to mocap or anything. Sometimes they need animation with a lot of style. Illustrators, box art, marketing artists. The marketing artist does all the splash art stuff that you get to see on the box art and that you see in Kotaku articles. They call it concept art, but they don't know what the hell they're talking about. I'm not picking on Kotaku. I'm just saying it's a general misunderstanding. Illustrators and marketing artists, these guys get to spend 2 to 3 weeks on any one painting. When you're playing League of Legends and you see a splash screen load up, that's done by a splash artist, and then it goes to a tech artist to animate it using After Effects. When you see banners on the website, when you see art books, when you see trading cards, when you see art on t-shirts, more often than not, this is artwork that's created by somebody in their marketing and licensing department. Sometimes this falls under the category of creative development. It used to be at Blizzard, but I think they dissolved that department. I don't even know what it's called anymore. This is probably the most glamorous job. This is the job that almost everybody thinks that they want to do, but they don't quite have the skill to be able to do it. It's also most often confused with concept artists. Now, a lot of times, artists, marketing artists, and illustrators do get opportunities to design characters and whatnot, but most of the time at a company like Blizzard, for example, they're usually working off of the in-game model and adding a lot of details to that. But I mean, think about it, you know, if you're gonna have an artist that's gonna spend 3 weeks on something, that can't be a concept art for your in-game assets. When you're talking about game development, more often than not, you only have a couple of days to design something. Something else to consider if you want to do this kind of illustration, high-level illustration, is that it is the most extremely competitive role that you could possibly want to do. And in fact, a lot of the work just gets outsourced to other countries where the cost of labor is cheaper. And in fact, if you do land a gig like this in the United States, for example, you're probably going to be getting paid less than the guy who's doing the icons for the game. Unless, of course, if you're a celebrity. If you're a celebrity, don't listen to any of these rules or roles, because you probably just get to cherry pick whatever the hell you want, and they'll give you whatever you want, and you get paid however much you want. You could even grab them by the... No, wait, never mind. Do you really want to design characters? Well, guess what? There's another role that it's still character design, but it's not a character designer role. What am I talking about? I'm talking about character skin designs. Now, one of the things that's actually a benefit to every game going into a service-based game now is that they need new skins for their players every week. They need new skins every week for their character costume designs. Everyone thinks that they want to design original characters, but guess what? You're going to go through months and months of having your work torn apart and thrown away, and some of your best ideas are going to get buried. But every week they've got to churn out new character skins for games like Fortnite, League of Legends, all these games that are now service-based. They're doing skins like crazy. This is one of the things that my studio does because they already have a base geometry. They already have like a skeleton and animations and a theme for each character. They need an alternate outfit for that character. I have a whole workshop dedicated to skin design over on my Gumroad channel. I've been designing skins for video games, big AAA games, for like a decade. So here you can learn what a task looks like for character skin design, learn how you can choose what kind of interesting theme you might want to represent, and how do you balance out the thumbnails with the final rendering. How much time do you actually get to spend on it? I go through the whole pipeline of everything that we do for games like League of Legends and Fortnite for skin designs. Environment concept art and world building concept art. All the storytelling happens in the world building. I think of it the same way that I think about doing characters. Sure, sometimes we're spending weeks just designing gas stations or hallways or corridors, but we get into it. We start telling a story with that environment. And I'll tell you what, a lot more of our work gets used because they have a hard time finding people who just want to focus on these environments. I was talking with a friend of mine that works at one of the world's biggest game studios, one of the biggest games in the world right now, and he said, yeah, we're so grateful just to have concept art for our environment stuff because everybody on the team just wants to do characters. With environment concept art, it's like we get to just design the world. If you're a character designer and you don't know how to do environment concept design, you're really cutting yourself off from a lot of opportunities. There's one artist I really love working with, but he only does characters, and I can't send him any more work when we're only focused on all of our environment stuff, and that's the stuff that most companies reach out to us to design for. Is environment concept art just pretty paintings of landscapes and cottages and shit like that? No, man, there's a lot of science to it. In fact, there's a whole process to it, and I've outlined that whole process in my advanced concept art facility workshop. If you have no idea how environment concept art is made in a professional studio environment, that's what this workshop is for. It's for you, man. But if you're like, why won't my portfolio get me a job? There's a good chance that maybe you're in a very, very highly competitive excuse me. Maybe you're in the most competitive possible field that you're trying to get into, and you should consider that you can have just as much enjoyment making games working in a different department. Consider tuning your portfolio specifically to focus on being a UI artist or a prop artist, or start digging into 3D a little bit more and see if you love it. If you absolutely love it, I'll tell you what, man, it's a pretty sweet gig. As an indie game developer as well, I've played a lot of these roles. I've worn a lot of these hats, and I'll tell you, I just love making games. And by the way, I didn't even cover all of them. It's dividing every day. At some point, they're gonna have artists who just paint eyelashes. I think by that point, I'll probably be out. I don't want to paint eyelashes. But who knows? Maybe it's a whole art form that I don't know anything about, you know? So that's about going to wrap it up for me on this video. I have a lot of workshops over on my Gumroad channel that you can go and check out. Still on sale. If you missed out on the 40% sale in March, you can still get any of my tutorials for 30% off if you use the code on the screen right now. So dudes, until next time, I'll catch y'all on the bond, and ciao, baby. Oh, yeah. My throat's all okay. I'm totally fine. Don't you worry about me.
This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Stick around to the end of the video for a special offer they're making available through my channel. This video contains spoilers for Half-Life and Half-Life Black Mesa. 22 years is enough time to make some of the best games feel outdated, their lessons superseded by more contemporary efforts. But Half-Life Black Mesa is a reminder of just how timeless the lessons of good game design remain. The extraordinary work of the Crowbar Collective to breathe new life into Half-Life would have amounted to little if the source material wasn't so resilient. Played today, vastly improved and expanded in some sections, while painstakingly faithful to the original in others, Black Mesa feels positively unique, contemporary, and pertinent. They don't make games like this anymore, and having played Black Mesa, you can't help but feel that they really should be. Half-Life's opening sequence is perhaps the most iconic opening in all of gaming, a 10-minute train ride where the player has no agency, except in their ability to move about the carriage and choose what they look at as the world scrolls past them. From here, you can spend upwards of 20 minutes walking, talking, exploring the lab before the incident, and in Black Mesa, it's another 10 after that before you receive the now legendary crowbar, and another 10 after that before you receive your first handgun. All told, it's some 45 minutes of introductory setup before the full game rhythm is established and Gordon is fully loosed on the Black Mesa research facility. In retrospect, the courage of this slow build cannot be overstated. Shooters in the late 1990s relentlessly competed for the title of Best Doom or Quake clone, racing to see how quickly they could push players into indiscriminate slaying. Half-Life's approach was the opposite. Demand the player's patience for an inordinate length of time and hope they consider the payoff worth it. One of the things that makes Black Mesa feel so pertinent is that this decision still feels courageous 22 years later. You'll struggle to name an action game released any time in the last 2 decades that takes this long to fully open up. Deus Ex Mankind Divided immediately thrusts you into a mission fully armed. Some of the most celebrated, pensive action games of the modern era didn't have half the nerve that Half-Life did. Foreshadowing is a key tool in the Half-Life toolbox. The chatter amongst the scientists seems dripping with it.
They're waiting for you, Gordon. At the test chamber.
The brief flash of Zen during the incident hints at our future destination. The sight of enemies encased in glass shows us what we'll soon be fighting. Rumours of the military's arrival are giveaways that they probably aren't there to help people evacuate safely. Half-Life delicately plants seeds in the player's mind that always later germinate into playable experiences. There's little fat to be trimmed. Everything you see, hear, or interact with exists to alert you to what's coming next, or to immerse you in the here and now. Immersion is one of the pillars of Half-Life's legacy. We take for granted now the idea that first-person experiences should aim to build convincing worlds and decorate them with sights and sounds that sell the experience. In 1998, this was not the established norm. Games arced wider and wider out from reality in search of fantastical settings. Realism was not only undesirable, it was actively avoided. A game set almost entirely in a single, contiguous scientific research facility where the only other characters you meet are lab coat-wearing scientists and uniform-wearing rent-a-cops would have been a tough pitch to a publisher prior to 1998.
Shut up.
It's not just the setting though, it's the minimalism. The environments of the Black Mesa Research Facility are exactly what you'd expect them to be and nothing more. They are long stretches of corridors and ventilation systems. They're office spaces, they're warehouse and mechanic workshops and sewers. They aren't innovative spins on these spaces either. They're pretty faithful recreations for better or worse. For better, the Black Mesa Research Facility is an enduring landmark in gaming because of its immersive quality. With little to distract from the authenticity of space, there's little to shatter the sense of immersion that's constantly built upon from the moment that train starts rolling into the station. Each section of the facility seems to flow unassumingly into the next with little pomp or ceremony. Even today, almost no games choose realistic settings for cinematic, story-driven first-person shooters. 20 years later, the Black Mesa Research Facility feels as unique and relevant as it did back then. This commitment to authenticity did come with a downside, and that was some repetitiveness in objective design. Almost all the environments in Half-Life are like an unplugged power cable waiting for you to plug them back in. The setup becomes familiar. A scientist or security guard tells you the power's down and you need to get it back on to progress. There are typically 2 or 3 areas that you need to clear to make this happen, so off you go, killing soldiers and aliens before returning to the starting point and flipping the switch. The adornments might change from area to area, the objective stays the same. Get the power back on, Gordon.
If you can get the power on, that train down there will take us to the surface.
While this can become repetitive, it's never unclear because of Half-Life's linearity, a quality that makes Black Mesa feel like a palate cleanser when played today. Modern games are loath to be linear. Just as they aim to get the action rolling fast or serve up spectacular spaces, they similarly seek to give the player as much freedom as possible in level and objective design. Open world became the default design philosophy for video games this generation, with linear franchises like Ghost Recon, God of War, and Metro making the jump to open world. With these new design philosophies comes overhead. Quests, side quests, quest tracking menus, maps, map markers, GPS navigators, fast travel, and more. Half-Life doesn't have maps or markers or quests or side quests because it doesn't need them. It's a single linear journey that provides for only slight detours, rewarding you with additional health or ammo pickups. You'll see 95% of Half-Life just by playing it, and you're not particularly incentivized to hunt down that remaining 5%. Like that train at the beginning, Half-Life feels like an amusement park ride that you simply hop on and move through and then it's done. There's great comfort and clarity and enjoyment in the knowledge that every moment has been designed to encourage you to move forward rather than pad it out to encourage horizontal exploration or backtracking. This philosophy carries through into Half-Life's progression systems, which is to say that there are no progression systems. There are no experience points, no weapon unlocks, no suit upgrades, no currencies to unlock cosmetics. The only character progression exists in gaining access to your HEV suit at the start, unlocking new weapons throughout your playthrough, and later in getting access to the jetpack. Beyond this, Gordon remains regular old Gordon right the way through. Were it to exist this way in a newly released game today, this lack of progression would be called boldness, but Half-Life released before RPG systems permeated every genre of gaming. Back then, it just wasn't a thing, and today, Half-Life feels all the better for it. To hear Half-Life described this way with its singular world design, its linear structure, its repetitive objective design, and its lack of progression systems, it might sound as though Half-Life is an unsophisticated and homogeneous game. The reality couldn't be further from the truth. With these simple design elements in place, Valve used them to do what no other game before it had done: reach across genres. In 1998, gaming was still in its infancy. The Nintendo Entertainment System had pushed gaming into the mainstream, and the release of the Sony PlayStation shoved it into the 3D era. Back then, PC gaming wasn't as avant-garde as it is today. Consumer-level 3D accelerated GPUs only started coming onto the market in 1996, the year that Quake released and changed shooters forever. With graphical advancement making the first-person perspective more realistic than ever before, efforts were directed towards faster action and bigger explosions. Valve understood that action was at the core of the first-person shooter experience, but they were the first developer to simultaneously set other objectives from the first-person perspective. At the top of that list is cinematic storytelling. Half-Life is often credited as being the first thinking man's shooter, but this isn't true. There were quite a few games before Half-Life that delivered on that, most notably System Shock from Looking Glass Technologies. What Half-Life did better than any game before it was placing you in the shoes of Gordon Freeman and letting the story unfold through your eyes, uninterrupted by cutscenes or text boxes. Gordon's ability to chat with scientists or ignore them was novel, as was his ability to eavesdrop on their conversation should he choose to. The decision to make Gordon the catalyst for the incident was also breakthrough, a sort of interactive cutscene that no one had seen before. These are techniques which are old hat to us now, but it was Half-Life that first introduced us to them. Valve's ambition didn't stop there. Where Half-Life could have remained in permanent high gear after the arrival of the alien invasion or the military, Valve instead chose to judiciously pump the brakes and deliver tense, first-person horror before anyone else was doing that. The headcrab zombies were directly inspired by Ridley Scott's Alien, and their shambling demeanor was inspired by Resident Evil. The opening levels, including anomalous materials, unforeseen consequences, and We've Got Hostiles, all lean on quiet suspense far more than they do on action. The monster at the center of the blast pit mirrors the asymmetrical power of the alien aboard the Sevastopol, albeit a stationary version. Questionable ethics is the mad scientist laboratory house of horrors, and the Lambda Core feels like one last tense inhalation before the closing act of the game begins. Valve's accomplishment here is impressive because all parts of the experience are as good as each other. Half-Life shines as an interactive storytelling experience, just as it terrifies as a horror game, just as it competes with some of the best action games at the time and since. 3 tranches of game exist here, with no compromises made to deliver on them, and no awkward separations between them to shatter the immersion that Half-Life so carefully maintains. As an action game, Half-Life's most notable achievement was enemy AI. It's little exaggeration to say that with the exception of 2005's Fear, no real advancements have been made since Half-Life. AI is this gaping hole in the rich history of video game advancements, and even today Half-Life's enemies hold up as an above average showing. They'll flank you aggressively, pin you down, flush you out with grenades, and coordinate with each other to press their advantage. They don't often make rookie errors like exposing themselves needlessly. They much prefer waiting near cover for you to expose yourself. A stark contrast to modern day AI, which seems to make a point of walking into your line of fire as often as possible. AI aside, Half-Life is an action game that never struggled with the fundamentals. Weapons are simple but satisfying to fire. Ammo and health are plentiful, allowing you to pull the trigger and take chances, rather than hoard your ammo or cower constantly behind cover. There's a blockbuster quality to it all, which the Crowbar Collective have done incredible work to restore. Surface Tension is the famous combat mission in the game, a sprawling, near 2-hour-long epic of attack helicopters and tanks and mortar fire and mayhem. Seeing all of this unfold in the Source engine with more detail and at a larger scale than ever before was an incredible thrill. Its relentlessness stands in stark contrast to the typical ebb and flow of the previous chapters, cementing Valve as masters of pacing. Pacing is another of Half-Life's most celebrated features. It's easy to contrast the different levels on how they're action or suspense focused sets an undulating rhythm to the game, but there are more subtle tricks that Valve employs to keep things moving, such as the way objectives or key information are succinctly presented. Half-Life doesn't need frustrating text pop-ups and tutorials to teach players new mechanics or enemy behavior. When they want to show you that the military mean business, they just show you. When they want to demonstrate how a turret works, they just showcase that too. Half-Life never gets bogged down in trying to grow the player's understanding of the world. They assume the player's intelligence and trust in their ability to figure things out. It's fair to say that we've taken very big steps back from this over the last 2 decades. One often overlooked point is the mythology of the Freeman and how carefully it's constructed during your playthrough. At the start, you're nothing. You're just a guy doing a thing, catching a train, late to work. You put your suit on and you're safer but no stronger. In the original Half-Life, you're given your crowbar immediately after the incident, but in Black Mesa, you'll spend a few moments being protected by a security guard. It's Crowbar Collective selling the idea that Freeman is helpless and needs protecting. As the adventure unfolds, your centrality and legend come into sharper relief. People have heard of some scientist who's making his way through the facility. Then they know you by name and comment that your reputation precedes you. You see your name written on the wall in blood, presumably by the military who've made you their #1 target. But the biggest giveaway that you're not just anyone comes from a most unlikely source. An elderly gentleman dressed in a sharp blue suit who's always watching, but you never even speak to him until the very end of the game. The G-Man is the pièce de résistance on top of the Half-Life experience. It speaks to all that remains unspoken within the game. What is Black Mesa? Who owns it? Who runs it? What's its purpose? Was all this just an accident or was it planned? Did Gordon have any real volition in all of this, or was it some elaborate maze designed to test him? It's the G-Man's silent gaze that raises these questions. He isn't helping us or impeding us or even interfacing with us. He's just watching from afar, like a talent scout on the sidelines. You've probably noticed that up to this point, I've been referring exclusively to the Black Mesa Research Facility component of Half-Life, and there's a specific reason for that. In the minds of many, myself included, Half-Life essentially ended in the Lander Complex, precisely when you jump into that portal. When you emerge at the other side in Xen, that wasn't Half-Life, that was something else. Totally separate from the brilliantly constructed Black Mesa facility, Xen was a hurriedly put together mess of floating platforms, ugly tunnels, and disappointing boss encounters. It was bad. It has its defenders for some reason, but even Gabe Newell's gone on record to voice his disappointment with it. It simply wasn't in the same league as the rest of the game, and given that it was only about an hour's worth of gameplay anyway, it's easy to pretend that it didn't exist. There was one group of people who couldn't pretend that though, and that group of people was the Crowbar Collective. When they set out to remake Half-Life in the Source engine, they faced a unique challenge with the final portion of the game. Where the Black Mesa Research Facility demanded a rigorous commitment to the original vision, Xen felt like it demanded a complete reimagining, a ground-up rebuilding that made the section worthy of the Half-Life legacy. Crowbar Collective were equal to the task, investing a total of 5 years of work to build the conclusion that Half-Life deserved. They absolutely delivered. Besides Xen's stunning vistas and environment design, the biggest achievement of the Crowbar Collective is the feeling of cohesion that this redesigned Xen brings to Half-Life. The original felt separate, disconnected, crudely bolted on. Here, the opening act goes to great lengths to showcase the explorers that came before you. You can see the structures they left behind, the equipment. You can see the head crab zombies wearing HEV suits, which remind you that you were not the first person through that portal. The objective design is also consistent. The platforming, which Half-Life is much maligned for, stays, albeit with a lot more handrails to prevent frustrating deaths. There's a segment rigged with explosive charges reminiscent of a previous section of the game. Structurally, areas will often send you to 2 or 3 different spaces to activate switches in a style quite consistent with the whole Gordon, get the power back on thing. It would have been possible for Crowbar Collective to really go to town here, developing a style of gameplay radically different from the rest of the game, perhaps even a better, more contemporary model of objective design, but doing so wouldn't have felt as authentically Half-Life. Crowbar Collective showed both wisdom and restraint in letting Valve's design work guide their own. That's not to say that there aren't new ideas on offer here, because there certainly are. The entire Gonarch's Lair level is a tour de force of innovative level design crossed with impressive boss design, and it's arguably one of the best sections in the entire game now. Where things fall down though is in the area that Valve had perfected, and that's pacing. The Interloper level goes from being a short section of the game to being a grueling hour-and-a-half long trudge through repetitive puzzles and endless conveyor belts. Had this section been half as long, it probably still would have been too long. With the inclusion of Xen in the complete Black Mesa package, there's a discussion to be had about how much this new chapter changes the composition of Half-Life as we understand it today. Where before Xen could be excised and ignored, the way that modern audiences will experience Half-Life will be shaped in large part by their reaction to Xen, now an integral part of the overall experience. The good news is that Xen is largely fantastic, and I would say that anyone who has not yet experienced it should. The 3 to 4 hours that you spend there are alone worth the ticket price. At the same time, Half-Life will now forever be a game of two parts. The genius of the Black Mesa Research Facility as brought to us by Valve, and the brilliance of Xen brought to us by the Crowbar Collective. That a group of modders working in their spare time for some 15 years could accomplish something on Valve's level is a testament to their hard work, their dedication, and their talent. I wasn't planning on reviewing Black Mesa, but Gabe Newell recently did a fascinating interview with IGN about Half-Life Alyx and the legacy of Half-Life in general. In it, he said something that really struck me. He said, Half-Life games are supposed to solve interesting problems. It struck me because I kind of instinctively knew that, but I never really thought of it that way. I'd always see all these people clamor for Half-Life 3, and I'd think to myself, no, Half-Life 3 doesn't need to exist yet. There's not enough reason for Half-Life 3 to exist. I actually thought that exact thought, but I'd never really linked it to the need for Half-Life to answer questions or solve problems. Gabe did that for me in his response. I got thinking about the kinds of problems that each Half-Life game has solved, which proved to be the perfect catalyst for a playthrough of Black Mesa, which in turn gave me an excuse to review it, so thanks, Gabe. With regards to the legacy of Half-Life, no one video could ever tell that story, but Danny O'Dwyer of NoClip did a sterling job in covering as much as is humanly possible. I recommend watching it if you haven't. For me, I'm still fixated on that question. What problems did Half-Life solve? And I want to offer my thoughts on the matter here in summary of this video. I think the central thesis of Half-Life is, what if a video game felt real? The first-person perspective wasn't at all new. Its history can be traced back to wireframe experiences in the 70s. What was new in 1998 was the ability to render 3D graphics on home PCs and through polygons achieve a level of realism that sprites were unable to deliver. Half-Life was the first game to take this first-person perspective, combine it with the technological possibilities of 3D, and direct that combination to the creation of something other than gory shooting. You can see this thesis echoing throughout every single part of Half-Life. The unassuming everyman character, the innocuous chatter of the scientists, the interactivity of the world and its physical objects, the simplicity of the crowbar, the realism of the setting, the intelligence of the military troops. It's all so grounded, so immersive, and so real that not even an alien invasion and a trip to another dimension can shatter the willful suspension of disbelief. In answering the question, what if a video game felt real, Valve had to break tremendous amounts of new ground. Its graphic engine had to handle physics better than anything that had come before it. They had to figure out an entirely new approach to first-person storytelling, level design, enemy AI, and probably hundreds and thousands of things that you and I didn't even notice back then or even today. We can look at Tetris, Mario, Doom, Mortal Kombat, Ocarina of Time, and dozens of other groundbreaking games, and their impact immediately jumps out at us. It's clear why Metal Gear Solid was the phenomenon that it was. Half-Life is certainly one of the most influential games ever made, but unpacking the subtlety of its genius is hard when viewing the source material. That's what makes Black Mesa so important. It takes the original, faithfully recreates its best parts, fixes its worst, and most importantly, makes us feel like we're experiencing Half-Life for the very first time. With a game as etched into memory as this one, that's a tremendous achievement and the best possible compliment I can offer to the Crowbar Collective.
Let's actually jump back to our government overreach conversation, and then after this we'll jump to super chats.
Okay.
So, oh man, this one really bugged me. The New York Post: more than 1,500 NYC inmates have been released during the coronavirus crisis.
I don't get this.
It's from a week ago. Well, it makes sense. All right, you got a bunch of people in closed quarters. They can't go anywhere. They're getting sick. Maybe it makes sense to put them under house arrest. I mean, not only that, but house arrest makes more sense for everything, to be honest.
Well, I did read that it's like blue collar / like non-violent,
Right.
That kind of stuff. So I don't know. It's not. I'm not necessarily agreeing with this, but it isn't necessarily worse than it seems. You know, because this is a scary. Like, you never know. It's like 1,500 like criminals.
No,
are out
man.
there.
Like, there was one story about a murderer who got released and then went and murdered somebody.
Yep.
You
The
saw
next
that one?
day.
Yeah, the next day.
Well, there you go.
Bro, let me tell you a story. I took a community college course for about a month on criminal justice when I was 18.
Okay.
First, I'll explain this. The secret to life. You don't need a high school diploma to go to college. You can go to a community college once you turn 18.
Okay.
And you take one course for however cheap it is, and then you put down some college on all your applications.
Some college.
Yeah, I'm a high school dropout. That's the loophole. But anyway, I chose some classes I thought were fun. Theater acting.
Okay.
And I did a criminal justice class, and we learned about this murderer. There's something called the exclusionary rule. What did Ben Shapiro call it? The fruit of the...
The fruit of the poisonous tree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if the police acquire evidence by violating your rights, that evidence can't be used in court.
Right.
Awesome. Awesome rule. Well, there was a story about a guy who had murdered a bunch of people, and he gets pulled over. The cops illegally search his vehicle because the cop knew he was a suspect for these murders. So he stops the guy, and then he illegally detains him and searches the vehicle. Boom, finds hard evidence like blood or something.
Okay.
So they arrest him. The DA's like, "We got him." And then once they get ready to gear up, his lawyer says, "What was the reason for the stop?" And lo and behold, the cop said, "Oh, I don't know, he was a suspect." And the DA's like, "No.
Like, why?
That's a Fourth Amendment violation.
Yeah.
You can't just stop random person because
It's because you think.
dude got released." And you know what he did?
Killed
Killed
the guy.
somebody the
Oh
next day.
Did
he
they get
really?
him
Well,
then?
so this is anecdotal and possibly
Jeez.
apocryphal.
Oh my gosh.
But almost immediately he kills again. And the craziest thing was, and this is a story I was being told by the teacher, so I don't know how true it is. Maybe you could look it up. Apparently, they find a dead body outside of his apartment, not just in plain sight. What? And so they go to him, and he's like, "Oh, I did it, yeah." And they were like, "What?" Why? And he goes they're like, "Why didn't you try and get away with it?" He's like, "Oh, you caught me already."
Oh my gosh.
It's something like that.
What?
Now,
Insane.
it's been
is nuts.
16 years, I think.
Okay. How
Since-
long ago was that? That was 16 years ago?
No, since I was told that story.
since
so
you were told.
It may have been in the age
Okay.
of something.
So a long time
But
ago.
the point of the story was to explain that even though we recognize how you can lose, and some people can get hurt, the Constitution's the Constitution.
Okay.
Police cannot violate this. So going back to the inmates being released, right?
Yeah.
I do think it from a civil liberties perspective, it makes sense. I do not think the state has a right to lock you in a box full of sick people. If you want to talk about
How did it get in there in the first place? I mean,
a guard,
you're right.
visitors,
They go home,
yeah,
come back in,
yep.
visit visitors. Yeah.
and now you got these people locked in these tiny rooms.
Yeah.
This actually goes into the governor's abuse of power, because there have been numerous studies, even studies out of China, showing that people outside are substantially less likely to catch COVID. It's in your home, in your office, in jail,
Interesting.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, like, we're in this room. It's not that big.
Right.
So if you, like, cough, you're going to splatter the wall with all that COVID stuff. And then I might walk by and, like, accidentally put my hand up or something, or might lean on it to tie my shoe, or boom, there it is. You're outside and you cough, it goes in the grass. I walk 20 feet in the other direction, not even think twice.
Yeah.
So that's why people have been saying these lockdowns need to be lifted. Same is true for a lot of criminals. House arrest makes sense. If they're doing nonviolent offenders, maybe like drug offenses or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That makes sense to me.
But I think the bigger picture here, what I'm trying to bring up is ultimately, it looks like a general breakdown in social order.
Yeah.
It's not about whether or not the prisoners should or shouldn't be released. It's about the fact they are being released. Whatever your argument might be. It's about the fact we got this story. NYC nurse who beat coronavirus, pummeled, robbed by a group of thugs. So in New York City, you get a nurse, front line on the COVID, gets beat up and mugged, saved by random bystanders.
Oh, she was saved by random bystanders? This is awesome.
That's great.
But not
Nice.
cops. Then you get this.
Of course not.
Video appears to show NYPD seizing young boy for selling candy in the subway.
Oh, look how sad this dude looks. He's like, are you kidding me, man?
What are the videos we get? Now it's possible that we're not hearing about the good things the cops do, like helping, grandma cross the street and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
there's definitely good cops out there. I know a few myself. It's like,
But-
they exist.
But I'm not
I know they
I'm not talking right now about the percentage of good cops versus bad cops.
Okay.
I'm talking about a breakdown in social order.
Yeah.
We get videos of cops arresting 12-year-old kids or detaining them or whatever. We get stories about a nurse being beaten by random muggers, no cop in sight. Well, now, they eventually did arrest some of these guys, so I don't want to act like the cops have done literally nothing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to point out that if we're going to start letting people out of jail, if Philadelphia says we're not going to be arresting people anymore,
They did announce that. That's true.
They did.
A while ago.
yes.
Yeah.
Yep. They're like, we're
And
going
in
to postpone it.
California? Was it California they did it first?
And they're releasing
like-
inmates all over the
They're
place.
setting the precedence.
Yeah.
To, like,
And-
people that see, that's what I was talking about, robberies in New York going up. It's if you announce these things, if you tell everyone no one's going to be there, the people that are interested in those things are like, yep, now I'm going to go do it. This is the perfect time for me to go out and do this.
That's
Don't
what
know why
I'm.
they announced it.
That's the point I have for this, right? It's kind of, it seems like there's some stories that look like government overreach, 12-year-old kid getting detained, right? I think the reality is with a bunch of cops being sick, a bunch of cops not wanting to get COVID, so they're kind of being distant. You got commercial burglaries are up 75%. You got 1,500 in New York, 1,500 people being released from jail. This nurse is getting beat up. Kids are getting stopped. What is the message being sent to bad people in New York City? You've got a governor telling you you can't go to the gardening section. Who cares? It's snowing anyway. But then they'll stop this 12-year-old kid. They'll tell you in Philadelphia, we're not going to arrest someone for burglary or for auto theft.
Right.
Or-
Or give them a ticket for them to be arrested at a later date.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That'll work
Yep.
out great.
Nice.
Yeah. So you know what ends up happening when they do this. I'm not going to say I have any stats to cite, but when one jurisdiction loses control, people outside come in. So if Philadelphia says we're going to give you a ticket, you come back later. Some dude in Baltimore is like, you want to take a hop over to Philly?
Yeah,
Because they're
let's
not
go
going to arrest
break into
us.
some stuff. I mean, they'll give us tickets, but we'll never go to Philly again.
So we simultaneously have, it's really amazing about the pandemic. We're getting like government overreach in some places and like government underreach, I guess, in other
Basically,
places.
Right.
Yeah.
What is
Like
going on?
it was that meme I was mentioning, the political compass, where every faction got something they wanted.
Yep.
It's like the authoritarian left is like the corporations are dying. The libertarian left is like I can't remember exactly what everyone wanted, but you've got borders tightening up for the authoritarian right. The libertarian right is saying the government's spazzing out. Everybody gets something they want.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like there was someone sitting in a park by themselves and they got a ticket. Like the guy running on the beach. It's just like one person. I mean, I get it. You got to set the precedent, So if one person goes, then 5 people go, then 100 people go, and it's like. But I don't like it.
But we just heard
I
that
know.
you are substantially less likely to contract this outside.
Exactly.
So they're forcing people inside where they're more likely to get sick. That's why authoritarianism doesn't work.
It
That's
doesn't.
what I was saying.
Everybody
Everybody thinks they're smarter than everybody else.
I don't see the problem with opening up anyway. Everybody's washing their hands. No one's shaking hands. Everyone's wearing a mask. Like, what's really going to change? Like,
Right.
Why wouldn't we just go back to work? Like, open things up, wear a mask, wash your hands, don't shake anybody's hand, stay away from each other. Like, we can do this.
Isn't it?
It's 2020. We've been doing this for a while. I'm pretty sure we can We can handle it.
Yeah.
Could you imagine the approval rating for Donald Trump if he wasn't a potty mouth?
Yeah.
Look. I know a lot of people are like, Tim, who cares? He's a potty mouth. I agree. I'm an adult, and I'm just like, whatever. He does have the media against him, but if you took his policies and you changed his attitude,
his environmental policies are terrible.
but no one cares.
I do.
I know. I agree.
I think they're terrible.
I agree.
That's like
Totally.
the worst part about him.
Yeah, he's pulled back tons of regulations
It's
for environmental
ridiculous.
protections.
Yeah, it's really bad.
But here's my question to you: have the Democrats brought that up at all?
Not in the slightest.
No, they haven't.
Nobody seems to be talking about it.
Right.
It's weird, you know? It's like, why not?
If you came to me and told me that the Democrats were actually working secretly for Trump's reelection, I'd believe it.
Yeah, I would too.
Totally believe it. Look, they try to
You're
impeach.
right.
They try to impeach the guy, and he raises $100-something million. His approval rating skyrockets.
Yeah.
It's like they're trying again. Like Cenk Uygur is saying Trump should be impeached again. It's like, don't you?
Aren't they already trying again?
Do you remember what happened last time you did this?
Yeah.
Why would you? The dude's like inadvertently being. I guess I just say Hanlon's razor.
Yeah.
Never attribute to malice that which can be explained by incompetence. These people are so dumb.
Oh, man.
But in terms of what I was just saying before, like you've got the Democrats, and this is one thing I've brought up all the time. People say like, Tim, why do you always rag on the Democrats? It's like, can you tell me one thing that they've proposed recently?
Orange Man bad.
That's right.
That's all I can think.
Now, of course,
That's it.
there are some policies they've proposed, and it's just not the leadership.
Well, Bernie,
Yeah, right.
I could probably name some things that Bernie has said, but thinking about what Biden says, he says Obama's name a couple times, says Orange Man bad a few more times, says and that thing a few times,
It really is. No, but
and then the cycle repeats.
he says that thing.
That and
the thing.
The thing.
But he's been getting worse, man.
I know, man.
I don't wanna-
I can't believe it.
I don't want to deviate too much.
No, sorry.
I think we can kind of wrap up this segment, jump over to Super Chats, but the point I'm trying to make is if we got these cities, acting like they have no ability.
We also want to bring into the program right now Tom Taggart. He is a counselor for the municipality of Colchester. He joins us right now from Bass River, Nova Scotia. That's about 4 kilometers from Portapique, where a lot of last night's action and this early morning action was taking place. So, Tom, thank you for joining us today.
Yes, hello. Yes.
Listen, how are you doing right now? I can't imagine the shock of something like this happening to a small community.
Yeah. Well, I just a minute. I'm sorry. I'm doing fine. I'm 4 kilometers away. But this is just an absolute tragedy. I have to. I just want to say, as this rolls out. But it seems like such a useless platitude for me to say that my heart goes out to these people, but it is unimaginable what some people in my community are going through here today. And so. Yeah.
And
Like humans want success. We want victory. We want competition. We want celebration. We want to love each other. We don't want death. We don't want racism. We have unlimited resources. Let's come together. We want life. We want it now. We want the stars, and we're going to have it. And anyone that tries to stand in the way of it will be cut off from the spirit. They will be cut off from humanity. We're not going to put them in hell. They are on their own side. They are cut off from this. I want to be with Brian Rose and David Icke in the universe. I don't want to be with these devil worshipers and control freaks. I mean, give me a break, man. You just said it. You're getting banned everywhere for David Icke. You haven't backed down. It isn't the private jet. It isn't the supermodel that makes the man. It's the will. It's that destiny that makes everything. And it's that I support. It's that I want. I'm not a man that looks at other successful men and feels disempowered. I'm a man too. I feel the wealth of our community together and the spirit rising. That is the future, and that will never be defeated.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves.
The city bombing, the 9/11 attacks, and the Bilderberg Group. In 1999, you launched InfoWars, which now receives 10 million visitors every month, making it more popular than Newsweek or The Economist. In 2018, your channels with over 5 billion views were removed from Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and 100 other social media and technology platforms in a similar battle that I am currently fighting. Alex, welcome to London Real.
Ryan, it's great to be here. Been a fan for years.
Alex, it's great having you here. I love being on your show last week, and we spoke about what's happened to me recently, which was my banned interview with David Icke. It was the second largest stream on YouTube in the world, second only to Donald Trump that day, and yet 30 minutes later it was pulled. Then I was banned on Facebook and Instagram. Since we spoke, Alex, I was banned on Vimeo, Dropbox, and LinkedIn, deleted my personal and corporate account on a Sunday. It's getting pretty crazy over here. I was broadcasting for 9 years, but now I'm starting to understand what it feels like to be in your shoes. Alex, maybe you can start off by giving me some advice here. What is actually happening to me? Because I'm not used to this space, and maybe you can tell me what's actually going on with me, and what should I expect to happen in the following months and maybe year.
Well, Brian, your problem is you're authentic, you're real. I've never met you in person, watched you for years. You come across as real. I feel good looking at you. My gut, that's 1,000 times more powerful than my conscious mind. The gut's really your subconscious mind. Says this is a guy I can trust. And then I look at the information you talk about. I check it. As Reagan said, trust but verify. And it's very, very accurate. It's very, very wide spectrum. So because you're not a controlled globalist psychotic, and because you're popular with the people, and because they can see the logarithmic systems showing that you're rising, they want to whack-a-mole. And really, that's what this comes down to. Anything popular, anything authentic, anything pro-human, that's what the system wants to shut down. That's what this is all about.
You know, it's been fascinating, Alex, because I looked at videos all over YouTube that had the same subject matter that I was banned for, specifically the linking of 5G and the coronavirus, and I want to get your thoughts on that shortly. The group Anonymous, I'm sure you're familiar with them, they ripped 11 minutes from that same interview and put it on the homepage of their YouTube channel with 2.7 million subscribers, and that stays up. It's almost like they banned me because I'm popular, Alex. And the same thing happened to you. It's the strangest thing. It's because it was watched by everybody that they want to take it down, and yet the smaller things they leave up. Again, strange for people to understand that.
They want to punish you to see if you will end up joining them and groveling and coming to them and saying, I'll do whatever you say, just leave me alone. They're not worried about the derivatives of it. They're worried about the fount or the source of it. And again, what did you say in that interview? What did your guest David Icke say? They talked about the Wuhan bioweapons level 4 lab and how it probably came out of there. Well, since you did that interview a week and a half ago, it's been confirmed that it was a bioweapons release out of Wuhan, and the Associated Press has the documents. And now the U.S. is on the edge of war with China. So the fact is, you weren't supposed to talk about that, not because you were lying, but because it was true. And so that's why you've been punished. So it's really a badge of courage what happened to you.
You know, it's so strange to be in this situation. You never think, until it happens to you, you never think it's going to happen to you, right, Alex? And you were at one of the height of your popularities when this happened to you. And again, what should I expect? You said that they potentially are going to come after me financially, maybe my reputation. you know, and I'm pushing ahead with this. Today we announced Rose Ike 3 on May 3rd. We want to conduct the largest live stream in human history of a conversation. We're going to do it on our platform. We want to get 1 million people simultaneously watching. I'm staying off of their platforms, but like, you know, pulling this off might be tricky, but I want to move forward with this because as a kid, I never liked it when people told me what to do. But based on that, what should I expect?
That jumped on top of you and is punching you in the nose. And Brian, it's not about kissing your ass. It's about celebrating what you're doing and actually promoting it, because they've sold this idea of submission is the way to get ahead in life. And so people submit and they submit and they submit. And then you're an eclectic guy doing all sorts of great interviews. You're popular with conservatives, with liberals, with, you know, Christians, with Muslims, with Gnostics, with Hindus. They really fear the truth of just somebody that's common sense and who's celebrating humanity. And so if you're not being attacked, if you're not being banned, if you're not being blocked, you really are serving their system. And if they're promoting you and pushing you, then it means you're going in the wrong direction. So when they blocked that interview, and when you didn't grovel properly, and when you went out and talked about it, when you went out and said, this is wrong, they went, well, let's show him and others that we're now going to take more away from him. And then the fact that you don't bow more to that, well, now they're going to try to punish you more. But once they get this system in place, which is only 6 months, a year out, everyone is going to be censored. Even if you're praising what they say, they're going to block you because they want the dehumanization of people being totally alone. They don't want that real currency. It's not the money. It's not the fame. That's not what we want. It's that interaction with humans. And for me, being on YouTube or Twitter, it was reading all the cool comments, folks that agreed, people that disagreed, people that kind of halfway agreed but had a point to make. It was that amazing human interaction that was so sexy and so addicting. And the system knows that they can't trump that. So that's why they want us socially isolated. That's why they don't want comment pages on any of the major sites or any of the major news sites, because they don't want that human interaction that always votes the Brian Rose to the top, that always votes the David Icke to the top, that always votes the Alex Jones to the top. They have never been able to defeat that. And so they keep looking for a system to get the David Ickes or the Alex Joneses or the Brian Roses to submit to them. When YouTube calls you up and says, Brian, you've been a bad boy, you're supposed to say, tell me what to say. And they go, good, good. And now they've got control of you. But what's the point of fame if you're just a puppet, a marionette, like one of those dolls they put on your leg? What do you call them, where you sit there and... A ventriloquist doll. What is the point of that? You're not yourself. You're not authentic. So we need to celebrate the people that tell it like it is and that are persecuted and don't back down, because there's coming a tipping point where they've tried to intimidate everybody and try to shut everybody down. It's not working, that they fail. And that's why they're so scared right now. So yeah, it's rough for you. 9 years successful, reaching millions of people every day, and now to see them coming after you. But you're a victim of your human success. You're a victim of creating authenticity. And we talked about that courage that's infectious. And so now that you're not backing down, well, now they've really got to make an example of you, because what happens if other people see what Brian Rose did and he didn't back down? Well, then there might be a coalition of people around the world who stand up and then build their own platforms that will immediately displace these other authoritarian platforms. Because the authoritarian platforms say all day, we're going to censor you because it's our platform. But really, they're trying to control all the other platforms like they told you. Don't talk about how we censored you off platform and we'll censor you. That is true tyranny.
Yeah, it's so fascinating, Alex. You really understand this. It's so subtle as well. And, you know, a hashtag started trending called hashtag London Real Army. And there's a bunch of people around the world that literally started shutting their LinkedIn accounts down, you know, and like pledging support and going up and saying how ridiculous it was. So there is a movement going on out there. But you're right, it's the humanity of what was happening with me and David in that room. It's like real people having a real emotional, unedited conversation that has something. Even David was like, Brian, the energy in this room is high. And so people are feeling that. Like you said, it's very subtle, it's your gut. And that is different than a montage to music of 5G towers, and maybe they're not as worried about
Well,
those
exactly.
things.
People know reality and gut level, and the authenticity is the only currency. That's what art and life and will and sex and power and everything is about, empowering humanity. And if you're not empowering humanity, you're the enemy. And so I know all these people that have all this money and all this power, and they're like, all I want is authenticity. That's all I want. That's the only currency of the realm. And that's why they want to remove that, because it is that authenticity that is diametrically opposed to what they're establishing.
Man, you got me really thinking hard here, Alex. The other thing they can normally do with 99.9% of the YouTubers out there is pull the purse strings. So first they demonetize the videos, which is a nice way of saying, please don't do that. And that's enough to stop most of them. But then the rest of them, when they take away their channel, they take away their business. Now, luckily, I've never relied on any social channels to pay the bills around here, and you haven't either, which meant you can build an entire empire and do it your way, which is the thing that doesn't get talked about a lot. Because you're such a great entrepreneur, and because we've made some moves, it means we can do these things. And again, they have less power, in this current situation. So again, we're a bit of an anomaly for these platforms to deal with.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. If the globalists weren't so anti-human and so evil, I'd make deals with them. If they were some new conquering thing that was better, I'd say, I'll adopt what you're doing. They're not. They're taking us backwards. And listeners have to understand that, I'll just tell a story here. Ted Nugent, I've known Ted Nugent 20 years. I've been to his house and hung out with him and his wife. They're big listeners. And, I was talking to Ted a couple years ago at his house, drinking coffee. He said, I used to be able to fill any concert if I wanted to, but there's only 3 companies that own it. And he said, as soon as I supported Trump, it wasn't supporting the NRA before that. As soon as he supported Trump, none of those venues would ever have him play again. So he goes and plays at convention centers and city-owned deals and veteran deals. He doesn't care about the money, but he lost about $15 million a year that he would personally make off that. And he said, you know what, Alex? He said, losing that money spiritually was like when I made the decision to not bow to their threats when they said, don't support President Trump, you're banned at the 3 venues. 3 companies own all the venues. He said, it was like I was even more alive, and I was already so alive. And we talked about that. So there's this thing where authenticity is a spiritual coin. And that's what the enemy can't stand is as soon as we realize that we have the intuitive will, we control the universe, we're building the future, and stop letting these social engineers control us through fear, it doesn't matter how small our audience is, it will exponentially build immediately because there are people looking for that free will. And so, yeah, I've lost hundreds of millions of dollars by not selling out. I don't care. It's all just a tool. But then it all came back. As soon as one door closed, all these other doors opened. And it's the same thing with people like Ted Nugent. He's not going to live with a thing with a stranglehold around him. We're building the new universe. We're escaping the tyranny. And so that's why you look at the Bible, it talks about get behind me, Satan. The archetype of Satan is always getting in front of your progress. He's not innovating. He's not building new stuff. He comes in to those of us made in the image of the Creator that can build, and he convinces us to be his slave, and he won't attack us. He won't raid us. Instead, we have to just punch forward, build the future, and always be innovating, and Satan can't keep up.
Alex, how did you feel when you got taken off those platforms? Did you always know what the other side was going to look like? Did you feel it in your heart, or was there panic? Like, what were those weeks like? And when did you finally realize that not only would you be okay, but you would be further empowered?
My dad, about 2.5 years ago, who's a smart guy and a confidant and a friend, he came over to my house on like a Saturday morning, and he said, son, you're really attacking big tech. You're really going after the system. You're going to get banned everywhere. And I said, well, that's my plan. And I said, I don't want to get banned, but if I'm going to get banned, I want to be banned first and foremost because they're not going to remember all the folks that get banned after that. And I want to get banned up front so that I'm an archetype so that later I can get people mobilized to fight what's happening. So you asked the question of, did I feel disempowered by it? No, I mean, I expected being used as the example of what not to be as the greatest example of what to be. But the worst feeling I had of defeat and humiliation was never getting a place in the country, never believing we would lose, never believing they'd cause martial law and the shutdown of the economy, and then finally having to talk to family that's got land in East Texas and saying, can I put a trailer on that? It's quick and cheap. Can I put a well in? Can I get food and stuff out there in case we fail? Everything shuts down. For the first time, not to just be thinking offensively about stopping this, but to have to actually go out and set up the emergency backup. And it felt weird and selfish to be sitting there on this private lake, family property we've had, since the Mexican land grant. And they're at the house in a fire and we're doing good. And I've got family all around me that are veterans and, that live in the area that, know how to skin a buck and run a trot line and do other things. And just realizing this is the greatest defeat of my life. That America is so close to death and total depression, and I have finally hauled food and guns and everything out and gotten wells ready and gotten my little private prison ready because things are so bad. And so I shared that with people, but that's how far down the things have basically ticked. And that's where we are now. Now, because I always spent 100% of my energy, we're going to win on the future. But looking at my 3 daughters, I got a son too, but he's now, 17. But looking at my daughters, 15, 12, and 3, I just said, things are so bad. And the public, on average, is so weak. A lot of great people, but on average, so into this tyranny theater, I said, I have to kind of be like Yoda in episode 3 of Star Wars, getting ready to leave for Dagobah. I mean, I've got to get ready to just out of here and hope Luke Skywalker comes down the road. I mean, it's that bad, my friend. And I don't want to be negative here because letting people know how bad it is may spur some type of resistance in them to break out of this. But there was a huge awakening, but now we've been hit with this giant tyranny, and it's just a very sad moment. So I didn't feel bad when I got mass banned 2.5 years ago, or when a year ago Facebook said that Jones, you can't even say his name unless it's in a negative connotation. Talk about a cult. But I did feel bad having to prepare an evacuation and to think about the fall of the Republic and the end of America and the long communist civil war.
This is the last couple weeks where you're feeling that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even a selfishness. It's a your instinct told you to do this and you didn't do this, and you need to care about your children. And it's the feds. Yeah, they've got the feds trying to indict me right now for made up stuff, and they call them, threaten, and say we're going to put you in prison and do this, and it's way beyond being deplatformed. And it doesn't make you want to give up. It makes you think, man, there's this many Americans that are pieces of authoritarian trash. Maybe I should just give the whole thing up and let them have themselves. But, I'm just being honest. Brian, I don't even know where this is going at this point. It's just that we have a really predatory, evil world government. And at a gut level, if I fight them, I feel alive and feel strong and feel close to God. If I try to mitigate things or protect myself or sell out, I feel like I'm dying and drowning. And so even, like I said, having a boogie point and even the beginning of the idea of, okay, this is so horrible, we may not be able to stop this round. It's like dying, but it's something I've got to do. So I'm not here on air announcing the white flag and we're defeated. I'm just letting listeners and viewers and people know, folks, this ain't a joke, man. This is hardcore Maoist re-education, Great Leap Forward, starving out everybody, social engineering 101, and I just hope people realize that groveling to this is not going to protect them, and most people don't have an out. Most people, can't do what I can do or what others can do, and that's what really scares me is I've tried to rally them. I've tried to get them ready. I've tried to prepare them. I've tried to warn them. And at a certain point, they're just going to have to be abandoned. Now, Trump may turn this around, and that's a whole other subject with the Chi-Coms and the infiltration of our government and how we became like this. And so if there were people in our government and the system that didn't want this to happen, there's still time to turn it around, Brian. It's just that the stakes are so dire, and Trump keeps winning and America and freedom keeps winning, but barely. And then the tyrants double down again exponentially, and then we barely beat them. Well, there's not much more logarithmically for them to do except, a bioweapon 10 times worse or nuclear war. I mean, things have escalated. I mean, it's in the news today that, okay, Wuhan bioweapon accidentally released it. Well, we already knew that. They released it on purpose. Look at all the scripting, the pre-programming, the World War, the attacks on the economy, China losing the trade war. I mean, they released this with the deep state to embarrass America, to bring down the West. China's open for business. We're not open for business. It's an economic weapon. And then the question is, well, what do they do if we defeat this? What do they launch next? It just becomes an issue of what do we do then? Because it really becomes a kill or be killed. And I don't mean that literally. I'm just saying metaphysically, people don't recognize a World War I or a World War II. They don't recognize something that hadn't happened in a long time until it's happening to them. And there's no doubt now that we're in that period that leads to giant wars, famines, and mass death. And I hate to be the guy here announcing that like some prophet of doom. I'm actually saying people should get ready, and maybe if the globalist left backed off, and maybe if they didn't entice China and others to launch all these attacks, and maybe if China thought America wasn't on China's side to bring down the Republic, maybe China wouldn't do it. But China tunes into MSNBC and CNN, and it tunes into Congress saying Trump's the enemy and America's the enemy and families are the enemy and guns are the enemy and mobility, and China's open for business. They take that as a green light to keep going. And the average American thinks it's fashionable and cool to attack America and to attack freedom, and they don't know they're summoning the Armageddon. They're summoning the battle of the gods, the Doomer Gamarong, the Uber Gamarong, the end of the world potentially. At least the Guder Damarong, the end of our lives.
And so what could people do right now? If they could say, you could speak to them for 2 minutes about the reality of the situation and what they could do to act. I'm guessing there are things that Americans and Western Europeans could do right now to get us out of this situation, or is it too late?
Brian, I think it's far from too late. But people have to face the fact that giving up their liberties for supposed freedoms always produces slavery. And so the idea that a virus that's killed less people in the United States than the flu killed in 2018, the idea that we need to take forced inoculations and stay in our homes and wear masks, all of this is a ritual of submission. And so I see Pennsylvania Senate passing a law that the governor can't keep people locked in their houses, or, I see Congress preparing acts to say churches can stay open if Walmart can. But if they don't see a major pushback, this will be taken as a green light, then there is no hope. And I get why people submitted to this. I mean, you had China with people being welded in their houses and women shot at checkpoints and drones and stuff like Day of the Dead, people flopping around dying, and we now know most of that was theater. I've got articles right here today. Mother enraged by face mask ad claiming her whole family died of COVID-19. She just paid for some stock photo as a modeling agency a couple of years ago. And they put the ad out saying her whole family died, her children died. None of it was real. Here's another one right here. UK hospital beds 4 times emptier than usual. The NIH admits. So the virus is real, and it came out of a Wuhan bioweapons lab, but only so big foundations could own the RNA of the virus to have a vaccine later. They couldn't patent the regular cold virus, which you can't have a vaccine for because it mutates. So you create a new cold virus, it's a chimera, then you can patent that and own the vaccine, own the hysteria, own the test, own the societal control. And so again, if people don't realize that this is all a psyop, fear-mongering exercise, I mean, I live in Austin. They've had 9 deaths from COVID-19. They admit most of the tests are false. If you've ever had the cold virus, it says you have COVID-19. But that's Travis County with 2.5 million people in it, not just Austin. Okay, and they've had 9 dead people. The flu killed thousands here this year. So you say that to people, but if I try to go to a grocery store, they're all wearing masks, which is now the new symbol of slavery, the new handcuffs, and they're just like, put your mask on, put your mask on. And so it's that rallying the public into the stampede, into the crazy-eyed hysteria that again summons the globalists to make this a permanent emergency they're now announcing, and apps with Google and Apple merge to surveil where you go and what you do, and forced inoculations. And Bill and Melinda Gates with their ID 2020 saying, oh, we're going to put a digital tattoo ink in the vaccine. You won't be able to see it, but it'll prove you've had it so we can scan your body. I mean, this is a giant leap forward of tyranny, way past what we could even have imagined a few years ago, and now it's here.
Yeah, the fear is fascinating. They did a survey here, Alex, in London, and 9 out of 10 people support the lockdown continuing for 3 and 4 weeks. These are the same people who are losing all of their economic freedom, and yet they're so scared that they'd rather stay locked down. Now, I walk around, I'm not wearing a mask, but, you know, in New York City now, it's mandatory. And now you're getting persecuted by other people if you're not wearing the mask, which is something, of course, Ike went into as well, where the fear is so much that now you're self-policed, and we've seen this happen in history. I mean, we see Trump trying to get everybody back to work. Is that the ultimate solution? Because this is an economic war.
Well, that's right. I mean, I can rant and rave all day long because there's so many facets to this, but it's about fear versus love, as David Icke says. It's about reality versus fake science. All these projections had 2, 3, 4 million dead by now, and it's a couple 100,000. It's 90+% lower than what they said, but we're supposed to just listen to these experts as if they're God. We have the West Coast and the East Coast saying we formed an alliance of science. We're never reopening. So first they told us 2 months ago, oh, it's just 2 weeks. It's like an extended spring break. And I said, watch, it's not going to be that. It's going to be forever, because the UN already admitted in their white papers they wanted 18 months until the forced inoculation, until you have the app proving you have the antibody. And now it's a medical tyranny that puts on apps what your antibodies are so they can test you and control you. This is a biblical power grab so massive that it's meant to just overwhelm us by how huge and how false it is, but the whole thing is based on lies and is based on fraud. And you mentioned New York City, where I live under Mayor Adler, this little UN globalist, in Austin, Texas, and they got the county to agree, 2+ million people. They say they will arrest you if you're not wearing a mask in public. And I know crew members who have been pulled over in their car, not wearing a mask, by police saying next time a $1,000 fine. And in the UK, all the videos coming out of they knock a guy's door down going, we hear there's a party here. There's not even a party. They just knock his door down and leave. Or police coming and spitting, you know, in a guy's face. They're talking so angry, saying, you're out here filming us, telling people not to be in a park. You're going to kill people. So listen, now Italy's saying at the beach they're going to have glass enclosures for each family, and you pay for those to be able to go into these bubbles. This is a psyop. It's inducing us into a medical tyranny. And then, as I said in my film Endgame that I put out 14 years ago, then the real bioattacks are going to come, because we've proven we'll sit in place and submit when the next big one comes. Because there's the number one thing I'm going to tell you today. The globalists are scared of releasing a real bioweapon that's actually killing 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90% of people like a man-made mousepox would do. So they need to drill you with something that doesn't really kill a lot of people to show that you lock down, you put the handcuffs on, you stay in your house when the drone flies over and sprays it out. Then the robots come along with a trash truck, pick you and your dead family up, throw you in the back. This is all a test to see if they can launch the big bio attack in the future and take us all down with the 5G and all the big studies. We can't talk about 5G, sorry. The studies show 5G boosts your immunity. Look up 5G immunity. 5G is good. 5G makes you live forever. 5G is not connected to COVID-19. 5G, 4G, 3G, all of it. Cell phone radiation is good. Radiation is good. Radiation is love. There you go. Now, Mr. Rose, they won't get mad at us.
What do you make of the 5G stuff?
Well, the reason 5G is really bad is, even here in Austin, just AT&T has half the roads covered. Where my office is, all the roads around it have it. And it blankets everything. And it picks up everything you're doing. And it surveils. And the studies show, LA Times, Wired Magazine has it, 5G causes cancer, but big tech and big wireless doesn't want you to know. But that was 2 years ago. That was like 1,000 years ago. You're not allowed to say what Wired Magazine said back then. So the surveillance is the big angle, but you can type in cell phone radiation, lowered immunity. It doesn't matter whether it's 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, 6G. China's already testing 6 and 7G. That just means new technology. 5G is just super powerful, but because it's so powerful, it only goes so far. And so that's why people are so concerned. But I mean, 5G is almost a distraction for the other Gs, and they're scared because whether it's in Japan or whether it's in Russia or whether it's in Europe or the UK or the US, people are going out and burning down 5G towers. And I fundamentally think that's not good because it makes it about the violence of burning it down. They've got insurance companies, they've got money, they put them back up. You need to get the studies, folks, to get informed and go to the city council, go to the local government, have them ban it. That's where we're having success. And file lawsuits, and schools that have them next to them have had huge cancer clusters. They're having them removed from towns everywhere. And so I really think that's the best response. If I was the 5G folks, I would burn down some of my own towers so we would be the victims. No, we need to politically and culturally and with information burn them down by exposing what they're doing. But regardless, they misrepresented a couple weeks ago what David Icke said on your show. He was simply pointing out that 5G is connected to lowering immunity and that all the places where you see the worst outbreaks are where the 5G are. Well, that's where you've got all of people close together and people all not in natural environments, and all of that adds together. But even if David Icke was wrong, and I believe he was right, don't we as adults have a right to hear what he said? But now because some cell towers got burned down, now we can't hear David Icke, even though he didn't say burn down cell towers. So again, that's that misrepresentation of what's going on.
I feel like sometimes I'm the only person shouting this echo of the First Amendment, and this whole concept of freedom of speech, because sometimes I say it and people look at me funny. And then maybe it's because I'm an American in this country, but, it's in my DNA, Alex. When I grew up in the 70s, it was just rattled back at me. And yet it feels like it's been slowly taken away from so many people out there. And in the digital space, maybe it never existed, where sometimes I feel like I have to say it 3 or 4 times before people say, oh, yeah, you're right, we should have that freedom. And that's a bit disheartening. I saw you're doing this You Can't Close America rally. We obviously see Trump really trying to push us back to work, which I think is the way forward. How much are you in contact with his administration, with his advisors? I know you were a big part of getting him elected, and he gave you that compliment that it was. You guys are very aligned now in what you're thinking.
Well, let me just put it to you this way. Brian, what you're saying is totally true. When it comes down to it, it's physical action. And they're using the peer pressure in counties in Texas. 70 plus counties in Texas have 0 cases of COVID-19. Austin, again, has like 8, 9 deaths. And you go outside, it's like end of the world stuff. Even though there's like deaths every day on the highway. And so, yes, Pennsylvania has passed laws that they can't shut things down. Other states are. And the answer is we, the people in our government, saying, listen, we know that it's crazy that 35,000 people die of flu every year, but we're 330 million people. It's still very rare. We don't shut things down because of that. You can't shut us down. You can't tell us we're non-essential, but this other business is. They told us that, globalism, we're going to get rid of factories, get rid of farming. You'll all be service economies. Now they tell us service isn't essential. So this is an economic attack, and I totally agree with you, Brian. I'm going to lead demonstrations. Owen Schroyer this Saturday is going to be down at the Texas Capitol with a demonstration. I'll be there as well. We're going to launch a website tomorrow that deals with not closing America and trying to organize people. But you can't close America rally, Texas State Capitol steps, Saturday, April 18th, 2020, 12 to 2 p.m. Central. And we're seeing amazing action all over the country, all over the world, of people just calling this out for what it is and not giving the moral high ground to the Communist Chinese and the World Health Organization and then the bureaucracy of the NIH and the bureaucracy of the system trying to say, oh, it's settled, do this, when their own science is fraud. They are putting a digital, economic, cultural, medical straitjacket on us. And we must revolt against it. We must say no to it. And so I agree with you. The answer is, once this opens back up, I usually went to mom and pop restaurants. I usually stayed at boutique hotels. I usually went and shopped at thrift stores. When this is over, unless big corporations say we're pro-America, we're pro-freedom, and like fly a flag out front, unless they fly an InfoWars flag or a pro-human flag, you know, an image of the nuclear family, unless they do that, that's under attack, I am never going to support the system. If I have to charter private planes every time I fly, if I have to do whatever, I'm breaking with them more than ever. They've tried to leverage their corporate power over countries to shut our economy down, to set a precedent, to force Trump to accept this martial law of the corporations directed by the UN. And so everything now, Nigel Farage came out and he said, my new Brexit is ending the police state and bringing the economy back. And that is going to be the whole economy. It's not being followers that sit there and, oh, I wore my mask, I'm an idiot. When the very UN tried to say, 8 weeks ago, oh, Trump, don't block people from China. They say it's a deadly biosystem, it's killing everybody. He goes, okay, block flights from China. They go, oh, God, no, that's xenophobic. That just shows it's all crap. It's emotional. It's a power grab. It's blue cities, blue counties, globalist corporations acting in a strike against the free market, a strike against human will, an attempt to make us submit to them, and a total domination over who we are. And so it must be met with action. And, I've been told by the establishment, this is their big move, that if you do this and if you challenge us, we're going to not just destroy you, we're going to indict you, we're going to take your children. And I told them, I said, go to hell. In fact, it's not even a hard decision to make. I feel so good, Brian, telling them to go to hell that I am so happy.
Who's telling you
them?
that?
I only feel good when I'm fighting them because that's where the victory is. My spirit, and Trump said something that's totally true. And Trump's not perfect, none of us are, but he said, the deepest thing I ever did was learn how to be shallow. Well, if the subconscious mind is hundreds, if not thousands of times more powerful than the conscious cerebral cortex, limited focus of our consciousness, shallowness is not shallowness. It's the depth of that. It's the immediacy of what you first impressions are really always we know what's real. And because it's not a first impression, it's the knowledge of all your ancestors, the knowledge of your whole life, the electrochemical swarm you're in, the sixth sense projection they're putting out, their intent. That immediate snapshot is reality. So again, the greatest depths is the shallows. And my shallows tell me, fight to the death against this lockdown. Don't believe that this virus, the evidence shows it's super weak, it's a hoax. And understand that if you bow to this, you've now prepared them to launch the real bioattacks, knowing you'll submit when they depopulate you. Well, I'm not rolling over and dying, and I want the New World Order to know, if they want to fight, they better believe they've got one, my friend.
Are they calling you out directly, or is this in so many ways that they're trying to quiet you, silence you, put you in jail?
Well, I've promised not to talk about this at this point, but they go after your family. And they go after people that are close to you, not just your children, not just your wife. And they tell you that we're going to put you in prison, we're going to set you up, we have the power, unless you submit to us. And they've done a lot of stuff to me in the past, a lot of persecution. But I used the World War II analogy before they had good radar. When the bombers were flying in out of North Africa into Italy, or the bombers were flying in out of London, England, into Germany, they went towards the flak because the Germans would have their big anti-aircraft guns over their tank factories and their bomber factories. And so they knew, it's like, well, we're here to do a mission. You turn towards the flak. So their attacks only gives me my guidance. I'm like, okay, the worst attack is right there. Okay, so now they've got the FBI at my office. Okay, now they're telling me I better back down. Oh, I need to double down on this. Okay. Oh, thank you for the persecution. Thank you for giving me, because I don't have radar that, this is the way, this is where I attack. Thank you very much for that. Because I didn't get into this to win in their system. I got into this to overthrow their anti-human system and restore the human system, because I love myself so much. I want my children and grandchildren and their great-grandchildren to have providence and to be able to have a decent future, not a post-human future. So the death of the species threatens me infinity more than my own physical death. And then my very cells say, yes, yes, yes. Oh my God, it's like the 4th of July and my birthday and Christmas all rolled into one. When they're trying to gloat and threaten me and put a gun to my head, I'm like, I've now really reached where I'm supposed to be. Now I'm within striking distance. And now I'm going to give them the full weight of the attack. And so I'm serious. But then the only emotion is I'm not strong enough. My body's not strong enough to carry the spirit. I'm like, the spirit's willing, but the flesh is weak. I'm like, I want to destroy them. I cannot believe how bad they are. So it's a total paradox. But yeah, I mean, we've definitely crossed the threshold. The enemy is throwing its full weight against us right now. And I'm as high as a kite, Brian.
I can tell. Do you ever think that your entire 25 years of independent media coverage has prepared you for this moment only? Do you have that feeling?
Oh, exactly. It's God. Like, I'm just a vessel. Every weight was put on me. Like, this happened 20 years ago. I couldn't have handled it 10 years ago. And I got to where I actually enjoyed the weight and enjoyed the persecution. So I'm not a masochist. I don't like pain. But I realize it's a goal-oriented. So it's kind of like a V for Vendetta, where he puts her in the FEMA camp. He tortures her. And it's not a good thing, but she says, kill me. And V says, now you're free. And exactly, it's like, as soon as you reach that point where they put the gun to your head, and they say, we're going to blow your brains out if you don't do it, you go, good, pull the trigger. That is finally where you're free. And everything was building towards that point. Everything was building towards that moment. And that's that place where you're like, oh my God, I feel so close to God. I feel so satisfied. This isn't even real. But that's what this is. That's what this is all about.
Are you still fighting the Sandy Hook charges? And do you have a different perspective on that now that it's been a year, 2 years since that all kind of happened, and you talked about it on Rogan and you talked about it on other podcasts?
Oh, totally. That's a great point. I mean, again, I wasn't that sophisticated. I knew about the New World Order and globalism, but until you get caught in the jaws of a PR campaign by the deep state, you really don't know what it is. So they had Jussie Smollett stage a racial attack, and they had ABC News say that Trump let Turkey blow up a Kurdish camp that was really the Kentucky shootout, shooting up some gasoline cans. So babies in incubators didn't happen. There's been so many staged events.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.
What did people do? People went and bought toilet paper. It's a wrong move. What are you doing spending money on toilet paper, okay? If you're going to go broke, wiping your ass is not the issue. You guys forgot what being broke's like, because when you're broke, you will not go buy toilet paper first. You'll do a lot of things to figure out how to clean your butt. Buying toilet paper would not be one of them. It just shows you how reactive people are. So first thing I do is take myself to zero. I look at all my inventory, all my assets, all my liabilities, and say, hey, I lose everything. Now what do? I need to start going out and collecting money. So I do a real quick retreat to an imaginary zero or below, and then I go and advance again. And I quit bleeding. It's going to be an unbelievable time if you can get through to the other side of it.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs, sharing our vulnerability, overcoming our fears, transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Grant Cardone, the American sales training expert, real estate investor, and New York Times best-selling author. Your real estate empire is valued at over $1.5 billion, and Forbes magazine named you #1 of the 25 marketing influencers to watch. You're the author of 5 books, including Sell or Be Sold, Be Obsessed or Be Average, and the 10X Rule. Today, the global economy is being torn apart by the coronavirus pandemic and total citizen lockdown, and we are here to discuss how to structure your business in the new COVID-19 reality, how to expand when others contract, and how to recognize the opportunities that emerge from the crisis. Uncle G, welcome back to London.
Brian Rose, it's always good to be with you, man. This is a perfect time. You've asked me enough questions in the past to know that I've been setting up for this for some time.
I know you have, and I can't wait to get into it. First of all, I just wanted to give you a big shout out for that 10X Growth Con, man. I was just so impressed. I watched it all live. I bought it afterwards, and it was just a great gala, spectacle. And I gotta say one more thing. You're a great interviewer, Grant Cardone. I know you say you hate it, but you were real natural on the stage, and you were fun, and you engaged people across all different types, man. I was really impressed with you.
I hate being the interviewer. I hate your job because I've watched guys like you and a handful of other guys that are so good at the interview game. And frankly, I mean, to be honest with you, I compare myself to you while I'm doing that interview with John Travolta or Kevin Hart or Floyd Mayweather. And I'm like, how would Brian do it? And I'm like, nah, just give up, dude. You're never going to be good at this.
Dude, no, man. I was taking notes from you because you're so you. You're so in the moment. And halfway through, you're like, guys, this is Kevin Hart. And everybody applauds. Like, I don't know, man. I couldn't be that spontaneous, man. I thought you did great. And you pulled stuff out of John Travolta that was gold, man. And so my favorite was Dana White.
That guy's a genius. Like John Travolta.
I mean, the fact that he flies those Boeings, but that he's thinking of those marketing deals, and he's so soft-spoken, but he's so smart, isn't he? And people don't know that about him.
That's such a quiet killer, you know?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and I love Dana White, Brad Parscale. Wow, that was a good one for me. I mean, yeah, and I just love how you were like, look, I just want the best on the stage, and I'm not thinking about what it costs. And I love how you said about Kevin Hart. You're like, you got into an accident, you know what, keep the check and let me know. I don't know, man, it just shows everything about you, the way you roll, the energy inside of you, and you should be really proud of that, man. So
yeah, thank you so much. Thanks.
Congrats, man. So look, when this all went down about 3 weeks ago, you're honestly the first guy I thought of, because when I read 10X Rule, and I've had you on the show twice, and I've had Elena on the show, and we talked about that moment when you're in Los Angeles, and the 08 crash has happened, or 07, whatever it was, and she's like, what are we gonna do? Make something happen. And you go into your office and you write the book, and I just remember it so viscerally that I was like, this is the guy who's always saying expand when others contract. You know, build the fire, like you say in your book. And luckily I'm older now, and I've been through those crises as well. And so immediately I was like, I'm expanding here, and I got to have that mindset no matter what. But if I was in my 20s, I probably would be tracting and going into fear. And so that's why I wanted to have you on. And to be honest, we've been expanding like madmen here. I mean, our numbers are up like 5x right now in the last 2 weeks because of publishing content, some amazing controversy with YouTube. So I'm not 10x's yet, man. I'm working on the 10x, but we're up 5x. And I wanted, what's your read on the virus, the lockdown, what the economy is going to look like, and what people need to be thinking about? And we got time, but how do we start this?
So the virus, I mean, I don't know anything about the virus, okay? I don't know about, I think I had coronavirus in January, the third week of January. I got hit with something I've never been hit with before. It did not feel like an organic, just for me, it did not feel like an organic flu. It felt like a synthetic. It felt like something had been built, like, because it took me down for 2 days. And I don't want to over dramatize this, but I remember waking up, it was a Tuesday, and I woke up on a Tuesday and I told my wife, I'm like, what day is it? What month is it? I literally feel like I've just lost the last 2 days. I had no connection with my family, my kids, like I was down. And I've been sick before. I was sick, I think my 3 growth conferences ago, I got really, really sick, but not like this. That was like an organic flu. It was maybe 3.5 years ago. This one was weird. So that being said, nobody was talking about a coronavirus. Nobody was talking about the Chinese flu or any of that. The economic impact of this is going to hit every person on this planet in a way nobody has ever planned for, including myself. And that is what I'm more concerned about right now, is because everybody's going to get this sickness. And this is not going to last 2 or 3 days or 2 or 3 weeks. It's going to be, and I've said this before on your show, the next recession would be deep, it would be long, it would make 2008 look like like nothing. And I really believe that that's what we're in for right now. And if I'm wrong, I just know that this is what I have to go through in order to get ready to do the next thing. I have to get to acceptance as fast as I possibly can. So what I do, Brian, and you and I have talked about this before, I just get to worst case scenario as fast as I possibly can.
And so you sat down with your team, Jared and Ryan and your COO as well, and just told them this is the worst it's going to be and this is the worst year we're going to have. And you just try to, just assess it as bad as it's going to be, accept it, and then move on? Because most people go through those 5 stages of grief, and it can take them months before they realize what's up.
It can take years. I know people that have been locked in grief for 20 years before they finally accepted mom's gone, or, I lost my job. So what I did was, this happened 3 weeks ago. Like when I saw it happen, it's the same. It's very similar to LA. When I was in LA and I saw Lehman collapse, Elena's like, what's going on? Because my face was white. Because I'm going through the whole thing too. Like, I'm like, oh my God, this is going to shut the entire world down, not a country. When Lehman collapsed, it was like, Elena looked at me and said, what's happening? What's happening right now? I said, oh, we're going to die. Now, I wasn't ready in 08. I've been getting ready now for 12 years. I said, that was in 08. I've said, that will never happen to me again. The next time this happens, my response is going to be different. Because the last time I contracted longer than I needed to, and I was not in a position to expand into the contraction. This time it was like, found out about it on a Thursday or Friday. I got a phone call actually Thursday night from some very, very important people that are well connected and said, hey, you need to get ready. This country's going to get shut down. And so I called 8 different people and said, hey, this is what I've been told. I suggest you go do these things to take care of your family first. Some of those people were at my office. I said, leave the office now, go get what you need in case this thing happens this weekend. It didn't happen that weekend, and then the next day, that weekend, we all got whatever supplies that we needed, which was water, food, and a handful of other things that we tend to use here in America that you're not allowed to use. And then on Monday, I had a meeting with my executives and said, guys, this is what's going to happen. We're going to have the worst financial year we've had. No matter what we do, no matter how creative we get, no matter how smart we are, this is going to be the worst financial year we've had in 10 or 12 years. Number two, who are we getting rid of? And they were like, oh my God, you're overreacting. We don't need to do that. I'm like, I understand. You see, I know that they're still in denial. People are hopeful. This is an asset. To be optimistic and enthusiastic is an asset. And all assets, this is a calculation I use in my business, all assets at some point become a liability. I'll give you an example. I love my kids, right? They're assets. They make me look good. They make me feel good. They make me stronger. Because of my love for them, they also become a liability. Because if you threaten my kids, I get weak. If you wanted to take them, I'm like, I'll give you everything I have. So they become a liability because I love them so much. Well, my executives have to be positive every day. And so they want to believe we're going to get through this. They want to hold on to everything's going to be fine. You have to have that to be a leader. And in that moment, that becomes a liability in a situation like this. So I had a meeting with them. It didn't go well. They were all like, let's keep everybody, it was an open discussion. That was on a Monday. Tuesday morning, I went into the office and said, okay, yesterday we had the meeting. Today, we make grants decisions. Make a list. I need 25% of the staff terminated immediately. Give them paid through the end of the month. It's going to be ugly. They're not going to like it. You're not going to like it. This has to happen, okay? Now, I've gotten so much heat for this. Publicly saying I'm going to let people go. And sorry, okay, I had hired most of these people in January and February. I knew that we were going remote. I had the intel that said the entire country will go remote. Then we'll go into quarantine. It's going to be rolled out in phases. I'm like, how am I going to bring somebody in? 2 weeks ago, I hired a guy. Now they're going to go home. Little Ben's going to go home and work from his house. I can't train him. I can't educate him. I can't make him part of my culture. Zoom is great, but it ain't that great. And those people had become liabilities. And they were like, how can you be this cold and callous? I'm like, would you hire them right now? Well, no, we wouldn't. Good. Then let them go. And leaders have to make decisions like that. If you're going to accomplish your mission, if you're going to survive, your household's going to survive. It is a bit selfish, by the way. I admit it. So anybody says Grant Cardone's worried about Grant Cardone, yeah, that's right. Because if I can't make the trip, nobody's going to make the trip. And so I am a bit concerned about my position at that moment of emergency. If a house was burning down, what would you do?
Run out. You grab whatever's super important and run out.
Yeah, if you can't put the fire out, but you're not going to blame, you're not going to go in grief, you're not going to bargain, you're going to do what you got to do to put the fire out. This is an economic fire. Economic fire, the first thing it does is the income of the company gets depleted. If you know this is going to go down and you keep your expenses where they are, guess what? The company is going to go down. You're taking on water. Okay, and when the boat starts taking on water, you have to start getting rid of something in that boat if you can't get rid of water fast enough.
No, I saw that video you put out, and I appreciate you putting it out. I've cut people as well, and you went on and said, look, a business owner, and people forget about the business owner. You say this person takes risk for equipment, for release payments. They take all the risks on the daily basis, and then when this happens, they got to make the hard decisions. But the natural reaction is, oh, how could you do that? Because you see people coming out saying, I'm keeping all my staff on and paying 100%. And it's just like, okay, maybe you haven't thought about what's really happening here.
This is what that guy's going to do. He's like, I'm keeping all my staff, but then he cuts his vendors. When you cut a vendor, you are firing someone. When you cut your spending, your advertising, your marketing, okay? When you don't pay your lease, you are firing someone. Like everybody's like, oh, I didn't let go of any of my people. You pay your people $3,000 a month, but you cut your lease at $10,000 a month. You fired a whole bunch of people when you're not able to make your expenses. So payroll is a very small portion in most people's business of their entire expense structure. There's a whole lot of other things you cut. Like I'm looking at property assessments right now across the board. Like, what do I have to do to renegotiate my property assessments now that we've had this hit? The point is, you have to take action. And the faster an individual can get to acceptance of the full ramifications of a situation, oh, my house is burning down. Okay, now's the time to put the fire out. And that means whatever it means. It means running out of the house, or it means grabbing some buckets of water, but it doesn't mean blame, it doesn't mean denial, it doesn't mean bargaining, and it doesn't mean let's find out who started the fire. It means put the fire out.
Okay, and I'm totally with you. We've got to cut costs right now because we don't know what's going to happen, and the uncertainty is going to kill you if you have those expenses up. This could be the worst recession in 100 years, probably will be, or it could be bounce back in a V. I don't see that happening, but it could be. And as a business owner, you got to be prepared. So, and I appreciate you encouraging people to do that and being public about it. So, all right, so that's kind of step one. What else is going through your mind? Because you're a human as well. You know, I caught myself a couple times, I'll be honest, Grant, where I get into just a bit of a dark space sometimes, and I got to snap myself out of it because sometimes all this stuff hits you, you know? And you're like, and then it's like, no, wait, I got to be a leader to my family and to my team and to everybody else. Do you find yourself in some situations where your head is like, you know, still processing things?
Bro, I got bad news coming at me every like so many streams of bad news coming at me. I got haters coming at me. I got opinions. I got evaluators. I got like things I'm being asked to look at and do, and what's going to happen. Are you doing this from so many different directions? It's unbelievable. So what I do to move through this is I have this little trick where I go to zero. And what I do is I assess a worst case scenario. I'm gonna lose my money, everything. I'm gonna lose my cash accounts. I'm literally gonna walk through, I'm gonna lose every one of my businesses. I'm gonna lose my contact, my reputations. I'm gonna lose my look, my brand, everything. Now what do? I rebuild. What am I gonna do in this new environment? And again, this is another reason why I had to let people go, so I could put my attention on the people I could keep, so I could actually be a leader to the remaining assets in the company. Knowing I could go back and grab those people when I need to, if I am able to. But if the boat sinks, I can't go back and pick up bodies. So what I do, Brian, is I go to zero, okay? I assume, okay, all your cash accounts are depleted. You go through everything. You're gonna have to file for bankruptcy. Now what? And I rebuild from a worst case scenario. And when I do that, my cash accounts won't go to zero. I won't have to file bankruptcy. I'm in communication with all my lenders. I'm in communication with my customers, and I'm proactive, not reactive. So we started reaching out to customers that we knew were gonna be in trouble. I'm like, do not wait for the customer to ask for relief. Let's go to the customer and offer them relief now. Okay, we know they're in trouble. Let's offer relief before they ask for it, because they're gonna ask for it. So
Who's
let's
the customer?
Huh?
Who's the customer? Tenants in this point, or like business customers?
It was some tenants. We went to 8,000 families and said, look, this is what we want to do as the owner of the property. We know you're going through lots of issues right now. You could be laid off. They're thinking about laying you off. This is going to continue on. Like, this is not going to stop. As the moment you guys see this video, this is going to continue. Like, this is the first weeks of this event. So we went to these tenants and just said, look, we know you're scared. Let's prepay 12 months of rent. We'll give you 3 months free. Put it on a credit card and reduce your monthly outlay. I'm reducing your rent basically from $1,500 a month to like $750 a month. It's a smart thing for the tenant. Maybe they can do that, maybe they can't, okay? But what we did was we started the dialogue and the communication to work with them. Car dealer, he's buying our services. He's got a 3-year contract. Let me give you 2 months of relief on your contract, add it to the back end. Okay, he appreciates it. He's not going out of business. Or what I could do, you owe me 32 months, pay me for 1 year, 12 months now. I'll give you the 3 years. and benefit you 2 years, okay? Because again, he's not out of business, but he is scared. And he knows the smart guys, the intelligent people know that there's trouble. And I don't want to wait to be communicating when he asks for help. I want to offer help and a solution that might benefit us both.
Okay, that's super smart. Talk to me about real estate as an asset class. What do you think of it now? Is it the asset you would like to be in right now if you could have chosen, or if you could choose now? And how does this play out? And is it also very, because you're into multifamily, is it subject to that? And do different real estates have different characteristics going forward?
Look, I'm in the best asset class you can be on this planet. Like, I am in the most protected asset class: food, water, housing. Now, there's particular kinds of housing that matter right now. Single family homes, like you guys have in the UK, where people want to own their own home, that is a terrible asset class to be in right now. I said it on both of the other interviews I did with you. Awful investment. It will prove to be terrible now. It is a liability. It is not an asset for one reason. If you pay it, it doesn't pay you. And you're locked in for 30 years typically, as opposed to being locked in a lease for 10 or 14 months, and you can just move in and move out. Retail, terrible place to be right now. Office buildings, probably awful. Look at what happened to WeWorks. I think it happened there as well as here. WeWorks was a big play on office for solopreneurs. It was a disaster. Retail will prove to be a disaster. Shopping centers, retail centers, they're just not necessary. People have to live someplace. And even if you have food and water, I got to keep my food and water someplace. If I got a dozen a case of water and some food, where do I keep it? I need a refrigerator, which means I need an affordable place to live. $1,500 a month rents. People have to live someplace. So I think I'm safe. Now, that being said, there will be damage in the space because guys that do what I do, some of them violated some of the smarter economic policies, which is leverage. They use too much leverage, and possibly they don't manage their properties correctly. So in a crisis like this, when the tide goes out, you find out who's a good operator and who's over leveraged. That's what Warren Buffett says. You find out what people are wearing at this moment, and you find out what they got underneath whatever they're wearing. Because the good operators, I was just on a phone call with guys that own $200 billion worth of real estate. And I was sharing with them some things that I'm doing right now. We're 91%, 92% occupancy across the board for this month of collections. Everybody was predicting that I was going to lose my property in the first 30 days. That ain't going to happen. I'm at 8,000 units now, Brian. I hope to go to 28,000 units through this cycle.
Cycle being a year, 2 years?
Probably 2 to 3 years.
Okay. I mean, because you were always...
The B thing in the stock market, like, I don't even look at that. That is complete. I'd rather talk about 5G.
Right, gotcha. That doesn't mean anything to you. Well, you were always in acquisition mode. So, I mean, in a weird way, is this good for being in acquisition mode?
Well, you can't acquire anything right now. So I can't go buy anything today. People are like, hey, I'm gonna go buy some real estate right now. You sound like an idiot when you say that, because you can't buy real estate right now. There's nothing to do yet, because you can't get debt on a deal. The debt markets have frozen up, meaning you can't go get a loan today like you were able to 30 days ago. And if you can't get a loan, then the kind of real estate you're buying is junk.
That's because the banks are unsure right now, or there's nobody in the banks right now.
The treasuries, which is, mortgages are based on 10-year treasuries typically. 10-year treasuries are the lowest of your lifetime, yet you're never going to see anybody quote any of that money right now because there's so much uncertainty in the marketplace. So there's no transactions that can happen today. The stuff that I bought 60 days ago and closed on 60 days ago, I can't buy it today. I can't buy them at that price. I can't buy them with that debt, and I can't buy them with their cash flow. So I have to wait some period of time for this other stuff, these other opportunities to pop up. But when they pop up, trust me, the guys that were on this phone call today, they'll be getting the phone call first. It won't be people new to the marketplace. So you're not going to go up to the party and suddenly like, hey, I'm here to pick up a whale. You know, I'm here to grab Moby Dick, and that's going to be your first score. That's not how this game works.
Okay. If, say, the stock market's off 20%, I know you don't look at the stock market for good reason, okay? It's a lot of hocus pocus. It's a different asset class. But say it's down 20%. If real estate was ultra liquid right now, compared to January 1st mark-to-market values, where do you think it is?
It's a bizarre question to ask because you can't really evaluate real estate like that, you know. So what is my portfolio worth today? It's not for sale. So when you say I got a $1.5 billion worth of real estate, I've always told everybody, look, you know, who knows what it's worth today? It's not for sale. So it's worth more to me. It's probably worth $3 billion to me. Because that's what it would take for you to buy it. Because that's the only time I'd have that conversation. I'm not a seller. We're playing Monopoly here. I got Park Place and what's the other one? Broadway or something? Boardwalk?
Yeah, Boardwalk, yeah.
I'm not selling it.
Right.
I'm not selling it. You're going to have to pay me rent every time you roll around that board. I'm there for the rent. I'm not there for the sale. I'll just tell you, in 2008, I made 2 mistakes in 2008.
Yeah, tell me what was happening in 2008 before the crash, as in how you were positioned then versus now, and then the mistakes you made, and maybe bring some people up to speed that might not have heard the stories or read the book. I think that's a real teaching moment here.
I had 200 units in 2008. Okay, is that right? 235 and whatever, 16 or something. I don't know, whatever. 250 units. And I got 800 vacancies today. So I have 4 times more vacancy today than I had units in 2008. The biggest mistake I made in 2008 was that I sold those properties. As soon as I could sell them, I sold them. And I shouldn't have. They're worth 3 times what I paid for them, even in this correction, even right now, this second. So I could fire sale them for 3x today, and they would have cash flowed for the last 12 years and paid me. Apartments is what got me through 2008, 9, and 10. And as soon as I could actually sell them, I did to get the money out of them. But I was scared. I was beat up. I was terrified. And that's the problem with contractions. They come with a lot of emotions. And so when people say, man, I'm going to buy in the next contraction, you said that before all the emotions. You said it before the coronavirus. You said it before the unemployment. You say it before the layoffs. You say it before you get your customers aren't paying you anymore. You say it before all the bad news. Now, once it's happening, now you got to make decisions with a lot of emotion and a lot of fear. So all I can do is look back. And I know the mistake I made last time was, number 1, I sold. And number 2, I wasn't big enough. I told Elena, I said, the next time this happens, I will not owe $50 million to the banks. I'm going to owe them $5 billion. I didn't quite get to $5 billion, but you understand the point. I think I told her, I said, I'm going to get to $500 million because that would have been 10x. I owe the banks about $1 billion today. You know, they call me every 2 weeks now. How we doing?
And that's good.
How we doing, partner?
Partner, because you're too big to fail, in a way.
I'm not a customer now. Like we joined at the hip.
You're a partner. You're a partner, yeah. Right?
They walk and they hear me squeak.
Right, because if you go down, they go down big.
Yeah, and look, I know guys that are hoping I go down right.
Yeah, what's with the hate, Grant? Talk to me. Why do people hate?
It is
That's not cool.
It is insane. It's not
really
personal, right? Like Bill Ackman. You saw Bill's interview, right?
Yes.
So Bill Ackman shorted the market, bet $28 million, made $2 billion in 2 days. By the way, it took him an entire career to figure out how to do that. But people are like, he made $2 billion off shorting the market. Everybody started hating him. My 10-year-old walks in and says, why is everybody hating this guy? He just made $2 billion. So people hate on people's success. And they want to see people fail. I think it justifies whatever they're not doing in their life. So I see people hoping I'm over leveraged right now. Let me tell you the bad news with that. If I go down, everybody's going down. Like, this is not like if Grant loses everything, you don't get affected. If the situation I have set up here, because I'm not over leveraged, I'm in a great asset class, I'm extremely conservative in how I invest. I am very not conservative when I market, but I'm extremely conservative in my investments. If my assets go down, your mom and dad, your uncle, your aunt, your grandparents, your hospital, the store in your local area, the whole world is going to go to shit. Which it very well could, by the way.
Right. Now that's an interesting observation. And I guess people hate on you because if something goes bad with you, then it justifies their inaction, you know, or maybe just people hate for lots of reasons. So I got to tell you one thing real quick. Every morning,
maybe they just hate how pretty I am. I don't
that could be it too. Now, some days I hate how pretty you are too. But what are my affirmations I say? I have a whole list of affirmations I say them out loud as I walk to work in the morning. One of them I say every single day, and I have all my students say it as well in my classes, is this: criticism is a sign of success. I want more. And I got that from you, and I always credit that to you. And it's so true. And I'm getting tons of it lately, but I'm also getting tons of you and tons of love. And I realize you can't get one without the other, because you're only getting love because you're putting yourself out on the line. You're saying something or doing something strong, big, risky, and you can't get the love without the hate, right?
And people want the love without the hate. They want the admiration without the criticism. It doesn't work like that. Criticism is a frequency. It's an aberrated frequency of admiration. It's a guy saying, I love you. I just can't tell you I love you, man. So I got to tell you I hate you. I want what you have. I can't tell people I can't do what you do to have what you have, but so I got to talk about you. I mean, a guy told me the other day, he's like, dude, you getting so much hate on YouTube. I'm like, yeah, I heard. Send me the link. I might share it myself. Because I know it. He's like, I cannot believe the way you handled this. I'm like, bro, it controls the narrative. You know, it controls the narrative, meaning he's talking about me and it costs me nothing, and no one will remember what he said. They will only remember my name. And look at the news cycles. Nobody remembers, you can't even remember 3 weeks ago. Tell me your biggest problem 3 weeks ago before this debate happened. The biggest problem you had. Yeah. You can't find it.
It's funny, Trump, I was doing his press conference every day, and I've been watching him. I just find him really stupid, what can I say? But at one of them, he brought up the impeachment, and I was like, what's he talking about? And I forgot he got impeached.
Exactly. There you go. You forgot he said he could grab whatever he wanted and take it. You forgot that Tylenol was taken off every shelf in the world, and it's now the #1 best-selling headache medicine. People forget everything, man.
All right, and so when it comes to criticism, like you said, it's just a slightly aberrated frequency of love. And if you see it that way, then you can use it as fuel. And you see the criticism as fuel.
Yeah, I think that there's, one is knowing that, that really helps me to know it's just an aberrated frequency. Converting it to fuel is a different thing. That takes a little bit of work.
Okay. Does that take a chip on your shoulder?
I don't know what it takes, actually. I just know I have it. I have the ability to convert. I was telling my wife this the other day. I said, okay, my 72-hour period's over. She's like, okay, you're converting, huh? We got this private little secret. I go into Neuron Man, and I become this superhero with enough hate. The first 72 hours is brutal on me. I get angry, I get pissed off, I get I get introverted. It hurts me. Nobody ever sees this. I start thinking I shouldn't have done that. I second guess myself. So it's somewhere between, 30 hours and 72 hours. And then all of a sudden I go into this, like this pivot. And it's not analytical. Something else happens. I don't exactly know what it is or where it comes from or how I got it, but maybe it's just I've received enough of it long enough. It might be the chip on the shoulder. I don't know.
Yeah, sounds like something different. And then you come back, the Superman, and you're like, now I'm gonna go do it.
There is nothing, not success, not money, not the yacht, not the plane, nothing turns me up another notch more than these kids, these people doing whatever they're doing. I'm like, guys, you have no idea what you're contributing to here.
And do you want to show them, or you just become the guy that's just going to go do it?
Some of it is that. Elena knows this about me, right? I was doing this project that you'll know more about in July, but it's the worst thing I've ever done in my life, hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And my wife, right in the middle of it, I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. And she's dropped 3 names on me. And I said, okay, I got it. Click, hung up, I'm back in it.
Those are 3 people that want to see you fail. Is that it?
3 people that the worst thing that can happen in their life is to see me win at another level.
Yeah, whatever works, right? If that's what it takes.
I mean, it's very immature. Some of this is very immature, low grade inspiration. It's not. Look, I know who I am, and there's certain things that I'm a pretty immature person, by the way. So nobody needs to say that about me. I don't know why more people don't say that about me. It's so obvious, but. And on the other end of the spectrum, I am a fairly aware person, but to know that I'm immature requires some level of awareness.
Yeah, now you have those both sides, and you have seen them both. The plane, it stays or goes, the jet?
Oh no, dude, please. That don't go till the end. No, that plane's like that. That's not even an issue. That plane, I need that plane.
You definitely need that plane, man. I want you to keep that plane. I want you to keep it all.
No, I'm just saying, like that plane's an asset. That's not a liability. One of the things that I do in these periods is I take a list of all my assets and I start putting them into liabilities. I start moving assets into liabilities. I did this with every product that we have in our store. Okay, which of our assets are liabilities now? Anything that was sitting in my store, we just put in a quarantine sale. Okay, like every physical asset I had, we took assets that I sell for $200 down to 25 cents. And my CEO was like, why are we losing money on this? We're not losing money. We're gaining 25 cents. She's like, well, we got $199 in that product. Yeah, that was a long time ago. You paid for that win last year. Good. Get 25 cents for it. Get $25. Get $19. So, and engage with the customer. Okay. Assets become liabilities always. So how do I convert an asset, your assets that might become your liabilities, to be my assets? Right. So I took a list of everything I own, my cash accounts, IRAs, 401ks, life insurance policies, anything and everything that would appear to be an asset. Cars paid for, cars not paid for. What's an asset? What's a liability? Does that still belong in that category? 3 weeks ago it was an asset. Today it's not. It's a liability today. The plane is an asset.
Okay.
That
That's
plane,
really well said.
That plane can get me to Kings. It can get me to Jamie Dimon. It can get me to the players.
Right, quickly. And how do you lead in a time like this? Your family and your team.
By doing. I never talk about leadership.
I know, but you do it.
I'm a doer.
Okay. get things done.
I do stuff. So I do stuff, and when I do it wrong, I calibrate and adjust myself and say, okay, that didn't work, and then I share it with my team. And whatever I'm asking my team to do, I do. Hey, you saw what I did? Y'all need to do that. And we need to do more of that. It's not about me doing it. I did it already. Now y'all need to do it too. So I'm just a doer. Everything I'm doing, you know, I got guys calling me, hey man, should I sell my car? What did I do? You know, should I invest in myself right now? I'm at my church right now. I've been at my church for the last 2 weeks working on me. First, I made a bunch of decisions. Then I moved myself to my church. Hey, let me go look at what I'm not looking at. I need to be in the best shape of my life right now. Spiritually, not financially, spiritually, so that I can be courageous, so I can take advantage of opportunity.
So what does that look like? You just kind of make sure you connect with what you're all about, connect with the deeper meaning, and just make sure that you're really in that space before you go out and make decisions, so they're not made for short-term gain or the wrong reasons. Is that what you mean?
Well, my church has a technology where I get to actually work through different things and come to my own conclusion about the best thing, the greatest good for me and others. So, hang on a second. My little girl right here.
Hi. She's always making cameos. She's always making cameos on your videos.
Fantastic. So we're both on course. I'm doing a course on confidence right now.
Nice. Grant Cardone on confidence. Nobody would believe that.
Yeah, but my daughter says, Papa, you don't need confidence. I said, baby, everybody can improve confidence. I did a course on motivation. Okay, I did a course on losses. You know, when you're rolling the way I've been rolling, I've been on a roll, dude, for 10 years. Like and then all of a sudden this thing happens. It's like one day I'm with Kevin Hart, Dana White, Floyd Mayweather, John Travolta, like the best of the best, man. And the next day, bang. You know, I got banks talking to me about, hey, we need to see your books every 2 weeks. I'm having to let go of employees. I got 500 staff. I go down to 400. I got people talking about rental properties, you know, people not paying their rent for the next 90 days. I got bad news coming, stock market dropping 9,000 points. The world's going to roll over. People getting sick, people dying, blah, 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 right? I'm like, hey, I had all this momentum going. Why is this happening to me? So I did a whole thing called a loss assist, where I get through my losses faster, because this is a loss for everybody. A loss of freedom. I can't go outside. I can't walk down the street. That's a loss of freedom. Your thing with YouTube. Like, what you mean? I can't say what I want to say. I can't have an opinion. So anyway, I just came here, and then I asked somebody, hey, I'm having trouble with these things. I have questions about these things. I'm concerned about these things. Good, let's work through it.
That's super smart. Super smart. All right, so what? Those millions of people that follow you on all your channels, Instagram, YouTube, and stuff. You know, a lot of them are you know, probably in their 20s. You know, they want to build businesses. What do you tell them to do in times like this? And then how do you know, expansion? How do you know when to expand? Because you got to make some contraction moves too, like cutting staff. So what do you tell them to do? And you ultimately tell them to invest in themselves, like you're doing.
Yeah. So, you know, the first thing I would do is take yourself to zero. Okay. Look at you and the spouse sit down and say, okay, let's go to zero right now. What did people do? People went and bought toilet paper. It's a wrong move.
Well, I've been following you for like 5 years now, but sort of behind the scenes, never really hopped onto one of these before. But basically, just to give you a bit of context, I actually followed all of your marketing advice when I was at university.
you.